Hey, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late. Hang on one second. I'm just going to play the fast word balloon thing, and I'm going to send Tom an invite, and he'll be here momentarily. So hang on, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Word Balloon, the Comic Book Conversation Show. John Suntress here. I'm so sorry. I started the show 15 minutes ago in the wrong Word Balloon slot. So I have sent Tom King the correct place to be. And now Tom is here. There's Tom. How are you, buddy? All right.
Sounded like a professional.
There we go. And we actually do. We have a bigger audience now. So as I was saying,
it's like we were doing the modcast over on Mod Radio, and it was fascinating.
True.
Boy, did
now we're here.
A lot of
this is great.
Talk.
So people that may have questions and stuff. There we go. Everybody's here. How are
we
you?
Apologize. We apologize. There was some link confusion.
Totally me. But good to see everybody. Sorry, guys. Anyway, Tom, you're here. We're going to talk about Human Target, and certainly, episode 2 is out. The issue 2. It came out last week. I thought
we're just talking about the Beatles documentary the whole time.
We can start with the Beatles talk as we get to the audience. I have no problem.
M.D. Martin documentary. We can just perform for the 80-year-old men in the audience.
Absolutely, man. No. Don't you think? All right, now seriously, let's take a moment about the Beatles documentary.
Let's do it.
I really because I do have friends that love it, and I also have casual friends.
I love it
that are not creative people that are like, too much minutia. I didn't need to watch Paul figure out Let It Be, and it's like, no, that's exactly why that movie was made.
He figures it out in the background of a scene. It's like John and the George are having some boring ass conversation, and just in the background you hear him figuring out one of the greatest songs of all time, and they're just bored in the corner. They're not even looking over.
But it truly, I think, and honestly, I lump myself in this group as well. I think anyone who does creative things, we are fascinated by others. How did they arrive at their ideas? What is it? And that's why it's like I said it's like bird watching the Beatles and taking notes, and it's like, wow, look at them work, look at them figure these songs out. That is amazing to me. And again, it is a lot of repetition of, no, that doesn't work, let's try this, whatever. But I love it. Yeah, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I found it to be utterly fascinating. From a creative point of view, yeah, for someone that's my job, is to create things and to collaborate with people and create them. To see them sort of go around and like they'd hit on the perfect line. You're like, oh no, that's where you should end, and then they go off of it and they come back to it, and you're constantly kind of rooting for them to. I found it very like tense, like almost. It was very much like a heist movie. You're like, oh no, you're there. Just go down that road. No, you made a wrong turn. No, those are terrible lyrics.
But also, not only the songs that they figured out for Let It Be and Abbey Road, but also like hearing Wah Wah and some of the George songs that end up on his solo. Or I always forget what Jealous Guy was originally called, but that was really interesting in the first chapter.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, that's Jealous Guy with totally different lyrics. Oh, that's interesting.
No, it was fascinating watching just geniuses at work, and there being little to no explanation of how genius actually works. Even watching it doesn't make sense. When you're like, okay, I am literally watching him come up with the Get Back song, and then I'm watching but even doing that, I was like, it's still like they're talking casually about this and this, and like that song is going to get literally 7 billion plays over the next 40, 50 years, and they're just casually talking about like this lyric and that lyric. It makes no sense to me. It's a very interesting time. I listened to your talk with the Beatles historian,
Professor Moptop. Yes, indeed.
Yes, and it's very. I feel like I'm a classic Paul. I know Paul's kind of the asshole in it, but I sympathize entirely with him as someone who doesn't. I feel like Paul did not want to be the leader of that band, but kind of felt like he had to.
I totally agree.
And because John was clearly on the drugs, and he was like 30 pounds lighter than he should have been.
Yep.
And
right.
Paul's like desperately asking John to take over the band and just hey, let's just go back to the two of us in the back of the bus. And he can't get to that moment because John's stoned out of his fucking mind.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, well, I guess I have to be the quality control. And he's just not natural in that role. He just is not. That's not who he wants to be, and that's not what anybody wants him to be. And it just
exactly
into the thing.
Because there's still, even though it's 69 and all these different things have happened to them, when it comes to the four of them, it's these guys that met when they were really, really young. And George, sorry, you're still 2 years younger than us, and I know you're bursting with all these ideas, but sit the fuck down. And Ringo, like, having a time. I don't care. I'm here. But yeah.
And John was the older guy, the guy who was in art college when they were still in high school. He was like the cool kid, and he was always. And they always kind of knew that he was a little cooler than them and kind of on the edge, and had. I mean, there's some magical talent. He's just like. I mean, look, the Beatles make no sense that like the second best songwriter of all time would live like half a mile from the fourth best songwriter of all time, and the two of them would live 2 blocks from the 10th best ssongwriter of all time. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. Like it's just like logically, genetically in the universe, that shouldn't work.
Yeah.
But that they managed to meet each other and become yeah. No, I thought their dynamic was utterly fascinating. I think you saw it in that conversation because there's a point where George is sort of on the edge of quitting, and they have this great conversation between John and Paul, and they cut away. They don't have the cameras. And Paul says to John, he's like, I want you to be in charge. I am not in charge. You take it. You this is your band. Like he immediately concedes. He's like, no. And John's like, oh yeah, maybe whatever. I could be anything, who knows. And John, you could just see there's just such a desperation to him. I very much relate to as a guy who I was in management my last year at CIA. I was like, I just do not enjoy bossing people around. It's just not I enjoy high quality things. I enjoy making high quality things. I don't enjoy telling other people to make high quality things. And I feel for Paul in this.
No, I agree. And also, once they're in Abbey Road, then John does kind of perk up a little bit and gets a little more involved. But yeah, it's I love it. I love comparing it to the movie Let It Be, which I own a copy of. It's washed out just like the original 35 millimeter print, which was blown up from a 16 millimeter shoot. It's but again, fascinating to compare the two, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. So yes. We're getting some questions, and I do want to throw to people before we start talking about the current product.
Sure.
And that is Lewis Headache asks, in Rorschach number 8, in which the detective was interrogating the 3 suspects, all 3 stories were displayed on the same page, top, middle, bottom panels. What did the script structure look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting issue because you can read that either vertically or horizontally, and it makes sense. So it's a fun Jorge, I wrote it very complexly, and then Jorge took it to another level of complexion. So I wrote it. I said in the beginning, I was like, what's going to happen here is I'm going to tell 3 different stories on 3 different levels. But you'll be able to read them. You'll be able to read them as stories, as one. Each person is telling their own story, but they overlap enough that you can read each page. And so what I did was I called each level, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then I just put decimal points, 1.2, 1 point, if there's more than one panel in that. So that's the way it works. So it was like panel 1, panel 1.1, panel 1.3 were, all the story of, I think the doctor went first. And then I did that whole thing. And then at the very end with the cups, and I never told you who was talking when, who was talking first. And if you look at the cups at the end, you can see that they're actually not in chronological order. I think one comes before the other. The exact pattern is, and then you can see at the end, where the detective's at actually. So yeah, it's something that rewards. You don't have to reread it. I mean, it makes sense as a story. But then after I did all that, Jorge decided he wanted to do another level where in my thing you can read it. Yeah, you could read it all the way across the whole story, and you could read it as a whole page. Jorge's like, I want to read it so you could read it entirely. Vertically and horizontally, and that was wow. Added that to it. So on top of that, levels that you could read, the story at the top, the story in the middle, and the story at the bottom, independent of each other or together. Now you can also read it up and down.
That's great.
So it kind of crisscrosses with itself.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's super. It was super complicated, but when you have a partner like Jorge, he makes it very easy.
But again, that shows the kind of people that you are collaborating with, that they are willing to do that kind of inventive layouts and composition, as much as make sure you tell a great story and stuff. So that's terrific.
Well, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, that was the whole project, was to do something that was worthy of Watchmen, but not Watchmen. So, like, we didn't want to do Fearful Symmetry again and just do, here's something that goes backwards and forwards. Not least because they did a good version of in G.I. Joe not so long ago, like 10 years ago or so, people remember.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a great, was it Costas did that? Yeah, it's in the.
Oh, really? Mike did it? That's terrific.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite issues. It's so good. In the, what's the guy's name who has the Hawaiian jacket when he did the whole thing? Africa.
Is that the artist that was with Costas?
No, the G.I. Joe who's the undercover officer, and he wears the Hawaiian shirt.
I suck at G.I. Joe.
Giggles or Guggles. It's a laughing thing. Sorry, I'm so old I can't remember things. Anyways, so we didn't want to do Fearful Symmetry again because that's its own genius. Where if anyone doesn't know, Fearful Symmetry is the issue of where they tell Rorschach's origin story, and it's the way it works is every panel, it's symmetrical. So like the panel on page 1.1 matches the panel on page, I think it's 28. I think it's 28 pages or 28.9. So and then it goes into the middle until you get the middle folds upon each other, and that's the famous scene where Adrian bops somebody with a statue. And so you can, and there are lots of books where you can read them side by side, including books that Gibbons himself has made. So it was a tribute to that without doing the exact same thing.
That's awesome, man. And Greg McKeon says makes the ever-increasing single-issue price tag worth it, which I really appreciate. Indeed. Absolutely true, man.
Yeah, very much. If you're going to pay $5 for a comic, we're going to make you able to read it, more than once. You do that first time on the toilet, and then, later on you find it on your floor of the bathroom. You get a second shit out of my comics. We're two shit comics.
We're going to get back to documentary talk later because there is a lot to talk about with the Dean Martin documentary and a couple other interesting things. And I even have more fun stuff I want to share, not only with Tom, but with everybody, as far as some upcoming word balloon projects that we're going to be doing right here on this channel. It's true. Let's see here. First of all, Chaos and Comics says hello.
Hello. What a pleasure.
And Denny appreciates two shit reads. And
two shit reads. Some people don't give two shits. I give two shits.
That reminds me of movies you can play with an album of music and they mysteriously sync up. Sure, like Wizard of Oz and Dark Side of the Moon.
Absolutely. It reminds me of that old Steve Martin joke where he says, someone comes to his show, they pay $4. Sometimes he does a $4.25 show. So you might make some money at his shows. He doesn't do a $3.50 show.
Daniel Gonzalez says, Tom, love your work. I'm sorry, to love your work because you really use structure to control the pacing and information given to the audience. Do you outline your issues in advance to fit the structure?
I do, but it's all in my stupid brain. I don't do outlines on paper. I do them all. I have kind of a rule that I created at the beginning of my career, which I'm sure I will regret at the end of my career, which is if I think of an idea and I forget it, it wasn't worth knowing. So when I start out with an issue, I sort of say, okay, this is how I think it's going to go. I kind of get it all set in my head. I sort of see the comic, and then I write from there. And if I forget something that I had thought of, it wasn't worth remembering. It's sort of my theory of writing comics. Now, that does not work for everybody. I think I'm actually the exception to that rule. A lot of people prefer to use notebooks and all, and I appreciate that. If I left a notebook around my house, one of my children would surely steal it and scribble on it, and it'd be useless to me. So maybe it's of necessity rather than of creativity.
Do you ever, after maybe script's already in, suddenly whatever the original idea was pops back in your brain, like, oh yeah, I was going to go that way. Yeah, fuck it, it's done. Whatever.
It does. Yeah, no, that's happened where I was like, oh right, that's it. Also, I say that like, oh, I'm so smart, but I have had those moments where I'm in the shower and I'm just like, oh shit, I better write this down. I was like, no, Tom, you have a rule to remember this. And I was like, no, fuck the rule. So then I run to my computer because that's not technically the rule, and then I'm butt ass naked sitting down at my computer. I mean, there's a towel involved, and then I'm typing, and then I get into my script, and inevitably, 2 hours later, my wife's in my room. She's like, what the fuck is going on here, Tom? I was like, no, I just had to get this one piece of dialogue in.
That's
It
awesome.
should be I'm still here. I had it before as I'm also here. Some shit.
Hilarious. And yeah, Daniel says you're like the Jay-Z of comics.
Yes, except not at all cool. So that's the difference between me and Jay-Z. That's if the only thing that separates us is the fact that he's incredibly cool, whereas I am.
Have I told you my Jay-Z story about? I was covering a boxing match. It was an HBO fight, and in Chicago, and I'm in press row, and there was a great. He passed away just a couple of years ago. Wonderful anchor of color here in Chicago, Warren Saunders, excuse me, of NBC, the Chicago affiliate. Just a rock of an anchor man, always cool. And we're all sitting in the press row. Jay-Z shows up first, and he's in this fantastic hip hop outfit that Flavor Flav would have been proud of, pinstripe, cotton candy pink. A little bit bigger than him, and I mean, just hip hop outfit, whatever. This is 2006, and everyone's like, "Oh, hey, man, really glad you're here. That's great." Everyone in the report is like, "Oh, cool, Jay-Z's sitting with us. This is great." Warner shows up late, is just in all black, looks amazing. He's in his late 60s. He looks over at Jay-Z, and he's like, "Thank God I was this close to wearing the exact same outfit." Everybody goes nuts. Jay-Z is laughing, hugs him. And it's like, all right, this is going to be a fun night. So, yeah. That was awesome. So anyway, there you go.
John, I have no Jay-Z stories. We've somehow not run across each other in a convention yet.
Honestly, man, I'm Forrest Gump. I mean, I really do luck into these like weird like celebrity situations or whatever. And truly, I mean, well, this is what's happened after doing Chicago broadcasting for 30 years. I mean, it's Chicago's a hub. So celebrities come to town. What can I say? It's cool.
No, that I very much appreciate it. And if he was one of the background actors on The Office, I might have seen him from afar at a convention. But as long as he's not that, I don't think we'll ever run into each other.
That's awesome. Mario wants to know, he wanted to let you know he went to his local store to buy Human Target 2. Wonder Woman Historia, agreed. Magic Order #2. Yours was the only one sold out. Wow, there you go.
Take that, incredibly successful and wonderful artists and writers. Yes. Take that, Phil Jimenez 3-year project of genius that everyone should pick up. Yeah, so I definitely feel like I took him there.
That's very nice. And Brian moved from watching this on Twitter to here on YouTube. That's lovely.
Welcome. And, we love having you here on this conversation.
John says with comics moving towards digital, does that influence how you write? For instance, knowing readers can view one panel at a time. For the record, I hope physical comics never go away.
No, not in the least. It does not. Number one, comics are not moving towards digital. If you know the numbers behind the scenes, which you probably do, and people say this, it's not there. It's interesting, even with the lockdown and everything. Comics are a medium that people like to collect. They're a medium people like to own. I read all of my new comics digitally.
So do I.
But that's because I get them for free digitally. So
I get a lot for free as well.
It's a cheat. So, but if I had to say, I guess I'm old fart, but to enjoy a book, to get lost in a book, I really have to have a physical copy, and that seems to be the rule for some 80% of you guys out there, men and women. So yeah, comics aren't technically moving to digital. I remember one of my first Comic Cons, Mark Waid was launching a digital initiative, and I went to the launch of it for some reason. And he was showing, and it was a great Mark. I love Mark Waid, is my favorite. And he was showing like this demonstration of how like this was going to be the comics of the future, and they had sound, and you could knock on them, and you had to do one panel at a time, and none of that came true. Our stupid little our little 9x12 page with its challenges of up and down, left, right is still the dominant theme and still the best form to create on in any medium.
Yeah,
and I still write for it.
Well, and again, digital sits alongside paper, and I like you said, a lot of my new single issues I read digitally because I'm afforded that ability. But that said, no, paper's doing fine. Just like now, the product that's made for both, the dominant thing is still paper. you do, however, have a very thriving digital world in web comics and other things that are made to be digital products. That's great. This reminds me of, I don't know, I'd say cable television 1985, maybe, for the entire country, where, yes, there are people that have it, but you don't need it to still get good entertainment. And, it's kind of, again, it's alongside paper. It hasn't dominated as far as, again, what the big two are doing. But yeah, I mean, Webtoons, certainly their global dominance is insane.
I was gonna do this comparison, and then get slapped in the face. Where I was gonna say it's like movies, where it's like we're never gonna stop going to movie theaters. Like the 2-hour movie, that's the experience of doing the movies. Like that's just the best way to experience that. Almost the best way to experience any entertainment is in a movie theater, eating popcorn and getting. But I haven't been to the movies in 2 years, so
that honestly,
it's the worst example I could have brought up.
I honestly don't know. And another thing, I mentioned this earlier, everybody. I got for a combination Christmas birthday present, I got Oculus Quest 2. And I have to say, I was watching movies from Amazon Prime, and they have literally like a virtual movie theater, and it does look like you're in a movie theater. The screen is huge, and I can't deny it's not, obviously it's not, and you want that shared audience experience for Marvel movies and exciting action movies and suspense and horror and things like that. But right now I can't say that I'm missing the theater experience, just because of the fear still of, people unvaccinated or whatever, but also I don't miss people talking on their phones and being loud and rude and having kids running around and stuff. It's like, it's nice to watch a movie and enjoy the big screen experience without all the BS.
I mean, someday this will be over, and then we'll get. Look, I could not be more pro mask. I'm in DC, which is still in sort of mask lockdown, and but I hate wearing them. God, I just I think people who think, oh, you like you're for masks, you might like it. No, it's terrible.
Nobody likes it.
It's and to sit in a movie theater for 2 hours and sneak popcorn and pull it up and down, it just doesn't sound. I'd rather, but someday this will all go away, John, and we will be free again. And you and I will go to a film and we'll have a good time.
I'm still optimistic as well. And we'll see how the movie theater experience survives post COVID. There are great questions here for both Human Target and Supergirl. I don't mean to ignore them, everybody.
How dare you when I could be ranting on masks.
Hang on one second. I want to, let's see here. I want to get going on some of these. Lewis says, love Human Target issue 2. So romantic. Aww. Greg drew Ice like Ana de Armas. How great is that? I have always been had a crush on Ice going back to her Kevin Maguire days. And man, Smallwood. I mean, Smallwood's channeling like the best of Robert McGinnis in his. I mean, it's Smallwood's art, but I really do feel like he's looking at that. Also, Phil Noto. It reminds me of like 15 years ago, Phil Noto, what Greg is doing with Human Target.
Yeah, when Phil Noto first broke out and was doing all that stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, Ice is gorgeous in this thing.
This Human Target is a book that leads with its art face forward. This is an art lover's book, and Greg is pulling out all the stops to do just everything on. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of him, of the work he's doing, and it's all him. It wasn't like I was like, here's your think board or your I want to draw like this and draw like that. No, this was all Greg came up with this style. He came up with it from the pitch, not even from the first script, and he showed me that before I started writing it. And it was Mad Men, it was McGinnis. I see a lot of my buddy Mitch in there, Mitch Garrett's.
Sure.
And he uses a lot of Disney cartoon backgrounds, which he'll tell you about how he's sort of been inspired by sort of old Walt Disney movies.
Oh wow!
And it's brilliant, and it sells that book. Like you don't need to read a word of it to love that book. And to fall in love with Ice just as hard as Chance is falling in love with Ice is the easiest thing to do. And if you can do that in a book, I mean, it's a hard thing. When they do it in movies, you got some music to help you. You've got a voice to help you. You might have an association with that actress. for an artist to do all that in just a picture and just the way he uses color is a brilliance. It's almost incomprehensible to me, and I cannot speak highly of it.
Last time I had that reaction to a woman drawn that way, or in general, is probably Sean Phillips back in the Sleeper days with Miss Misery.
Oh, Miss Misery.
And you weren't, again, you didn't want to, if you fell in love with her, it was going to mess you up, but you couldn't help it.
Wasn't her powers? She had to feel pain to get power or something. Oh yeah.
Yeah, she had to feel lousy, to be strong. And if she wasn't she fell in love with what's his face.
Yeah.
And it hurt. It was physically hurting her.
Oh, I love. People haven't read Sleeper. It's my favorite spy comic in the history of comics. And I used to be a spy. Yeah,
and just like what you're doing, frankly, in Human Target, it uses the Wildstorm universe as a backdrop to tell this very cool noir spy story and everything. And I would say the same thing with what you're doing with Human Target, where there's an assassination plot on Lex Luthor. Chance takes the poison instead, and now we've got DOA in the DC universe where somebody dosed Christopher Chance, and he's only got a week to live. Right? It's a week, right?
It does 12 days. It's 12 issues.
12 days, of course.
Each issue is a day.
Yes, of course.
And there's a calendar on the back to help you keep track.
Yeah, and of course that the other thing to do is really like a Zapruder film, keep going back to the first issue and watch some of the single panel teases that Greg and Tom give us in terms of what's coming and stuff. And either that or choose to ignore it and then go back and go, oh yeah, that's right, that was supposed to happen. So it's fantastic, man.
We had the advantage of, again, I wrote this all together as Greg was doing the first illustrations. So I had the advantage of issue 1 not being drawn by the time I finished issue 12. So I can put a ton of hints in because I know exactly where the story is and where it will end up.
That's awesome.
It's very helpful.
I like this question by Mike Blacklist. Did Human Target start more as a Christopher Chance story or a JLI story? Ice going so in depth with the Overmaster stuff took me by total surprise. Agreed.
Yeah. We're going back to Mark Waid again. Mark Waid makes his second appearance on Word Balloon. It started out as a Human Target. I've told the story before, so I apologize if people haven't heard it. People tell me not all the time, but you should write this person or that person on Twitter. And I constantly make this joke where I take whoever they're putting and I put them in a Tom King book, which is just them staring out the window at the rain and being sad. And someone said you should write the Human Target. And so I wrote Human Target looks out the window, boom, Human Target gets shot. He says, oh, I should have seen that coming. It's not really that funny a joke.
It's a little funny.
And literally the next day, Ben Abernathy, who's a brilliant editor, who's head of the Bat office, called me and was like, are you serious about wanting to do a Human Target book? I was like, there was nothing serious about Twitter. And I really did not take it that serious because I mean, Human Target is a fascinating character. I mean, he's had 2 more TV shows, 1 more TV show than Aquaman. I guess now that Aquaman has a cartoon.
That's true. Hilarious.
So he should have a little cachet to him, but really he doesn't. Nobody knows who he is and sort of where he came from. And he also had a great, Vertigo series that was, one of those genre-defying series back in the 90s and aughts.
Yeah, Pete Milligan and Cliff Chang.
Yeah, and Cliff Chang did some work on that. That's the only one, because I was a big Cliff fan back in the day, and I collected every single thing he did, and that's how I knew Human Target, because I had those Cliff Chang issues. And I'm still a big Cliff Chang fan. You should read his new book; it's brilliant. Although Old Woman, Catwoman, I'm already doing that. Another book, Cliff. God, no.
Yes.
And so I was like, yeah, I didn't really believe the editor really wanted to do this, but did you drop your Oculus?
I dropped my microphone.
This is the real world, John. You got to pay attention.
I dropped my Oculus. That sounds like something happens at a senior citizen retirement home every day. Hey, actually, that's a jump to 2050. Hey, I dropped my Oculus, nurse. I can't get my VR working. How the hell am I supposed to screw Diane Cannon without this? Help me.
Diane Cannon.
Then you get an old person in there. A dead VR person that, somebody my age would be like, hey, I always wanted to have sex with Diane Cannon. Have you got that file? Send that to me.
Uh,
I know, I can't help it.
So I didn't really
What were
take
we
it
talking
seriously. We were talking about Human Target. I was trying to come up with a pitch.
Yes, I'm kidding.
And being a stupid writer, like the first place your head goes with the Human Target is like identity, you know, like he's always changing identities. So I was
Yes.
like, oh, you know, what if he's stalking himself? He doesn't know who he is, and he does all these kind of shitty ideas. And then I read Peter Milligan stuff, and I was like, oh, Milligan did all of it.
Yes,
It was
he did.
all that room was taken. That runway
That's
was
true.
completely
Yeah.
run over.
Which I loved. I mean, that's the paranoia side. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Keep going.
that's all it's super. So I went back. The best way of comics is always to go back to the original. I went back to the Giordano, Len Wein stuff when he
You
was
bet.
just this like private detective, private eye who lives in Boston, had 8 pages to solve a mystery in the back of Adventure Comics, and I loved that idea. And I was like, oh well, you know, super in, you know, John, I've talked about it, but I'm super into noir, especially old noirs.
Yes.
I steal plots from them all the time. So I stole the greatest plot of all time, which is from DOA. DOA is in the public domain. So, you can't come after me. If anyone doesn't know the movie DOA, it's an old noir. And again, it has the best plot of all time. The idea is a guy gets, he goes out, he's kind of like thinking of cheating on his girlfriend. He goes to a bar and he drinks a drink, and he wakes up in the morning and finds out he's been poisoned. And he's going to die in 2 days, and he has to solve his own murder before he dies. And then he does solve his murders, and then he dies because it's a wonderful thing. So it's like
back in the 40s, you could do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, you cannot do a better plot than that in solving your own murder, because it raises all of these questions of like, you have 2 days to live. Why do you care who killed you? Why don't you go off, spend some time with your family? Why are you? So it raises questions of obsession, and it raises questions of mystery, and it raises questions of death and oncoming, all those like big themes you want to play with. So I love that. So I threw the DOA plot, Human Target. It got accepted. And again, I wasn't taking it too seriously. You know, I was like, oh, this is just a rehash of an old movie. And then Greg got on the book. The editor found Greg. I actually had requested him. Right, I suggested him, I should say, while he was being suggested by the editor. It was just kismet. And
Cool.
yeah, Mitch and Doc, you know, we're always ever in conversation like who should draw this book, and they both were like, Greg should draw it.
Oh, that's great.
And so that I saw the first image, and I saw what he was going to do a chance, and I saw what sort of, and so then I was like, oh, okay. Then I started taking it seriously, which didn't answer your question at all of how the JLA got involved. So the JLI got involved because it's for a really stupid reason. I wish I had a better one. My youngest son, he's 7 years old. His favorite comic book character is Ice. That's just like, that's the one he gravitates to when we watch like Justice League Action or Justice League International. He's like, where is this an Ice episode? He has the Ice toy. He's not as obsessed now as he was, say, like a year ago. That's what happens with 6 and 7 year olds. But at the time, like, and he'd ask me constantly, he's like, oh, you know, because we talk about what I write. You know, like, I'm writing Rorschach. Ugh. I'm writing Batman. Ugh. When are you writing Ice, Daddy? You know, it's like that kind of stuff. So literally I was like, okay, well, I need some suspects. I want Ice to be in this book big time, just so I can brag to my son that I'm writing this. And so I decided to make it the Justice League International, a team I loved. That was my Justice League when I was a kid, that I read religiously, and made by 3 men I couldn't admire more. And yeah, and that's the story of how. And now, of course, Ice it's a very grown up relationship they have, and my kid can't read it, so it didn't really benefit.
That's sad but true. You know, you just got to show him the com pages of Ice without any dialogue or whatever.
I show him the cover. I say, yeah, look, Daddy's writing Ice.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. There we go. Little. God, that's just so great. And also, I love, and we're going to only get into it more as the story develops. I loved a lot of those second tier JLI characters, because there is like almost like, all right, what have they been like? In fact, what's happening in the story? What have they been doing all these years since the blah era? I think I added one extra blah there, or ha. But yeah, you know, but yeah, no, I think that's intriguing. And also it does allow for, well, a lot of them have stayed on the true path, and man, maybe some of them haven't done that. And that's going to be very interesting to see if they are, if any of them really are the ones that poisoned Chris by mistake, or
not to spoil anything, but yes, one of them is one of the suspects on that splash that's in one is the murderer. This is not like, I tried very hard because it's very easy for someone to be like, oh, this is obviously Lex Luthor manipulating them to get them all to tell each other. That's not it. The reason I addressed that very thoroughly in the first issue, because that's not the twist at the end. It's not a Lex Luthor big old plan. Someone in the JLI decided they were going to kill Lex Luthor, which is a perfectly normal thing to do. Lex Luthor is a goddamn genocidal maniac who happens to be a trillionaire who wants to take over the world. And killing him is a very justified thing to do. And one of them decided to pull the trigger. And because they're the Justice League International, they pulled the trigger the wrong way and killed the wrong guy. Yes. That's a genuine mystery which will have a genuine solution.
That's awesome, man. That's very exciting. No, I think it's terrific, and it so far has exceeded expectations. I love the way it reads, and just like somebody said earlier, someone said I pour an hour and a half just looking at Smallwood's art. I'm not spending that much time, but I am absolutely spending a lot of time after reading it, going back and just appreciating each panel and the level of technique. And is Greg also coloring it?
Yeah, Greg's doing he's coloring. Clayton Cowles is on letter. Clayton and I work on everything together. Cool. He's my favorite letterer. I think he's the best letterer in the business right now. With my hats off to John Workman. I know who's still working, and Todd Klein. But Clayton is my favorite. I adore working with him, and you see his letters are perfect on this. He designed a new kind of balloon to use and a new kind of everything for this. He redesigned his stuff off of this thing. Yeah, but Greg's doing everything. He's doing pencils, inks, colors. I think it's mostly digital, and he did a huge process piece on how he did the cover. If you want to go to his Twitter feed, which is just sort of brilliant. If you go
excellent,
the entire thinking behind what he did.
Yeah, I'm hearing he's kind of gun shy about podcasts these days, which bums me out because I met him years and years ago when he was doing a series for Dark Horse. Could not have been sweeter, and shame on me for not pulling the trigger back then and maybe establishing some trust. There's just a handful of writers and artists that are just like, I don't want to do a podcast. It's like, all right, no problem. I'm not going to make it. It's all right. I'm going to still say hello to you when you're at shows, but
My problem with Greg is I went on a podcast with him, or I went on a press thing with him, and he was so cool, calm, and collected, and smart. He just threw me under the bus. I was like, God damn, he just man, I hate when people show me up. Yeah, he's awesome. I have not a negative word to say. Not that I have anything. I work with the best artists in comics.
Casey says he couldn't help but think of Jeff Bezos during the Luthor scenes.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really model him on Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is, I read the Washington Post, and it's a paper I like, so I have a soft spot for Jeff Bezos, despite all the stuff he does, because he's kept that paper good.
Yeah, that's true.
As sort of a one shining star, but Lex Luthor is one of the easier characters to write in comics. He has a very distinct voice. He thinks he's much smarter than you and much more cultured than you, and he is very casual about that. So it's not hard to write Lex Luthor. It's super fun, but it's not hard.
And he does what look like altruistic things, but of course it's only to feed his ego and say, "Yeah, see, I am the best guy. I know what this world needs, and I'm happy to be and I am the savior of the world. You're welcome."
Yes, and he's 6 steps ahead of you, unless he doesn't care about you. He's, I don't even you are an ant to me, or I will crush you. Those are his 2 ways he thinks of people, and he thinks of Chance very much as an ant, not as someone who's worthy of crushing. Yeah.
Greg wants to know: have you ever written a Christmas every year you've written Christmas and Hanukkah stories? The Sergeant Rock story being a favorite. What are your Christmas story and Hanukkah stories we have to look forward to this year? Are you in the Christmas special this year?
No one asked me to be in the Christmas special. DC Comics, what the hell? No, every year I do it, and this year I did, but I have last year I did a Lobo Hanukkah, which I very much liked. Very Lobo Hanukkah. Where I made Lobo have an adventure where he which sort of paralleled the journey of the Maccabees, because the actual Hanukkah story is like a Braveheart story, and it's a story about war and like the little guy overcoming this big army. It's kind of a cool story. And no, but this year I don't have a specific, but I have probably the biggest one I've ever done, which is and I bring the room down, but the Batcat annual, which is now called a Batman Catwoman special, I believe, which is coming out in January. It's a little late for Christmas, but it's entirely a Christmas issue. It's entirely dedicated to Christmas, and it was John Paulion's last issue.
Yeah.
And he drew the first third of it and laid out half of it, and his friends are finishing it for him. They're finishing it from where his layouts were there. They finished it from his layouts. I'm starting to choke up on it. And then Mitch is doing all the new stuff basically.
That's great, man.
Mitch Garrett's, and I've just read it's a whole story of I don't know if I should spoil it. Anyways, but they're doing a JPL tribute issue where they're going to have some of his old stories in the back, some of his friends talking about him, a lot of artists who are doing dedications to him, pinups for him. It's a huge spec. Instead of, it was originally written for JPL as just an annual, and now it's become a whole tribute to him. But the story as it originally was is this huge expansive story that's about Catwoman and her whole life and Christmas, and it's a Christmas story about Catwoman's life, which will stab you. I just read it yesterday for the first time. I wrote it a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And it's a stab you in your heart. I mean, Mitch and I have done some sad stories, and he's like, "This is the saddest thing you've ever had me draw." I mean, there's nothing I could do that could make it worthy of JPL's talent and contribution. But I hope people appreciate it, so you get to appreciate his art and who he was. But it's very much a Christmas special, and I love this time. People don't know. You're like, well, Hanukkah and Christmas. I'm half of each. My father is Christian. My mother is Jewish, but I was raised by a single mother. My father left when I was young, but my Jewish mother was the most into Christmas Jew you've ever met in your life. Like, she was not convert to Christianity, but a convert to Christmasianity. So I was raised in just this very a Christmas loving house where we just had a menorah on the side.
I hear you, man. No,
children.
Well, and so many of my Jewish friends, obviously, Hanukkah is their Christmas and everything, and that's great. And it's the non-secular part of Christmas is a nice thing, and not that the Christianity part of Christmas isn't a nice thing, but it is this nice, like, let's all get together. It's the end of the year, not only family but friends, and also, I mean, God, especially growing up here in Chicago where it's so goddamn cold. Even right now it's 16 degrees outside. Yeah. But the great thing is, we're all together, and it's nice. It's a comfort during some of the lousy time of the year or whatever. And it does. It's a nice thing. So no, I'm all for it. And I love when I love that you the Sergeant Rock story and the Lobo story are great examples of fun holiday stories, man. No, I think that's terrific.
That Sergeant Rock story is going to be in a museum. They're doing a DC Jewish American museum that they're setting up, and there's going to be an exhibit on me because I am a they're going to put the Sergeant Rock up, that story up with so
that's awesome.
It's going to be
cool. You know what's I'm sorry you're not, obviously, and I don't blame you for not. First of all, it's the holidays. Plus, it's Chicago in December. I don't blame, although supposedly on the forecast, and this is classic Chicago weather, like I said, right now, Monday night, it's 16 degrees. It's supposed to be like 59 on Friday. And that's what I love about Chicago. It's just insane weather. That said, I understand why you can't come, but I was going to say there's at the Pritzker Military Library, mentioning Sergeant Rock, we've got this great exhibit that's going to be there till the spring, and it's Bill Maudlin's single panel
awesome.
Willie and Joe stuff from Stars and Stripes, the two infantrymen.
Some of the best comics of all time.
So beautiful. So yeah, I haven't gone yet, but I've got a standing ticket, and a buddy of mine and I are going to probably go this month before it all wraps up. So
yeah, I'm sorry I'm not going to see C2E2. I was supposed to go at one point. I bowed out because it wasn't even COVID. It was just the idea of missing a weekend in December with my kids. I got those are the best weekends. I'll trade you a weekend in January, February, but like the weekends when they're like, I want to go and shop for presents and get trees and
Sure.
like, those are the good weekends with kids.
Yeah, man. Oh my God, yes. No, I don't blame you at all, dude. Do not blame you.
But I'll be sad that I'm not there. I like C3 too. It's a fun con.
Well, yeah, we'll have fun. We'll still have fun. Mr. King, which of your books should I introduce to my 10-year-old?
I have a 7-year-old, so I can answer this question. And the 12-year-old no, I have a 13-year-old and a 12-year-old. Oh my God, my 12-year-old turns 13 next week. Oh my
wow, God. It begins.
I know it begins. He's the nicest little guy. We'll see what happens. The one book I let my kids read of mine is Superman Up in the Sky, which is, I mean, it's not the most like, it's not like Mark Miller's Superman, which is made for the cartoon, which is brilliant, but at least it has a happy ending. Superman does get, and there's some funny stuff in it, and there's some guest stars, and all of my kids have read that one work of mine, and they enjoy it. And it's an easy, fun introduction to Superman. It's a little depressing, but I think a 10-year-old could probably handle that. Yeah, that's my most kid-friendly thing I've written. Besides, I guess even the Elmer Fudd one has a lot of people getting shot and stuff, and it's kind of sexy.
I don't know. That's a good point.
Superman up and hopefully Supergirl will also be of that same caliber, although there is some genocide in Supergirl. So, but it's in that vein of a story that's a little nicer.
Someone was asking earlier if the fact that have readers of Supergirl and Rorschach and certainly Strange Adventures, have they and especially the sci-fi of Strange Adventures and Supergirl, has that led them to more sales of Omega Men?
Yes, I mean Omega Men keeps plodding along as like a perpetual seller. I get I think it's more. My joke is, among all the people, different companies pay different things. You have the same contract with them. Over the course of its run, Omega Men has made me about 8 times more money than Vision. Now that doesn't make any sense because Vision probably sells a little more, but just that's the way the royalties have run. So Omega Men, people keep picking up that book and discovering it and finding new things in it, and I'm super proud of it. It's an anti-colonial book, and that theme has only grown in the years since. It's a book that like literally says, there are 2 opposing views, and like a guy's like, well, let's find a third way, and then like no, there is no third way. Like it's about like the problems of compromise and sort of a lot of the issues we've been dealing with lately. So I still think that book holds up surprisingly well for a young little guy trying to be Alan Moore.
That's cool. Deanie wants to know, would you be interested in doing a Black Label Sergeant Rock Easy Company story or OGN, the way that like Azzarello and Kubrick did their Sergeant Rock story, which is excellent, by the way.
Yes, I'd love to. Sergeant Rock has been off the table at DC ever since I got there. There is a big creator who wants to do it and has kept it. And I've been at DC since 2015, so it's been
wow.
So it's been like 6-7 years they've had it. I was like, at some point you have to let this go.
Are you gonna have to tell me who off the record later? I gotta know.
Yes, I would love to do it. I'd love to do it with Andy, of course. That would be my number one choice.
Oh, that's a great idea. Sure, of course.
Andy and I did a Sergeant Rock story in that Superman.
Yes, indeed.
That was his idea. Like it was one of those things you don't want to kind of bring up to him. But I mean, you should have Andy on someday. He worships his father. There's, this is. They had just a fantastic relationship, and Andy's always willing to sort of do things that sort of reference his father and carry on his father's legacy. And yeah, especially if I could do with Andy, that would be the best.
That's awesome. Here, regarding more Omega Men, Greg wants to know why you chose the Guardian Angel prayer for Kyle in Omega Men.
It was a few different things. Number one, Kyle's half Mexican. His grandmother was born in Mexico, and I wanted to sort of talk about his Catholicism and sort of what that burdens you with, and also what that blesses you with going forward. My wife is a Catholic, and so we have a lot of conversations about that. And so I wanted to use a Catholic prayer, and it was in this contrast, because a lot of that stuff was about sort of religious extremism and how people sort of cling to these religions or don't cling to these religions, and what they believe in, what they don't believe in to get their goals. And it was about him sort of realizing, who would help him, and he had to sort of help himself, that he sort of became his own guardian angel. So that was sort of what it was about.
Understood. Jeff has a question. I'm curious of what you think, Tom, of the recent trend of creators shifting to Substack. Do you ever imagine starting a newsletter?
I think anyone willing to give money to creators is a good idea. This is a very tough business in comics. It broke Jack Kirby. If it could break Jack Kirby, who is more talented than any of us, it can break any of us. So the fact that there is people in Silicon Valley who think they're value to what we do, and they're willing to take that money and throw it our way, I think is very good. Would I be interested in doing a newsletter? I don't know if I'd be good at it. I like writing. I'm not sure I'm so good at writing about writing. My Twitter feed is, you guys should all follow me, but it's horribly boring these days. It's just, it's like a picture of my dog and a few jokes and me talking about writing. I'm not quite made for the sort of expose yourself on the internet set. I read James's, I read Scott's, and I read Donnie's. I was like, man, these guys, they're doing this so well, and I don't know if I could do it as well as they do. But yeah, I think it's a good thing for comics, and I think it's and it'll create better comics for the stores. It's just a way that's to pour stupid money into creators' hands, and if creators have stupid money, then they're going to create amazing things, and that's good for the industry as a whole.
I hear you, man. Definitely.
It's like a MacArthur grant. It's just good.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And really, the material is still in the creator's control, and everyone is like, don't worry. Eventually, these will be physical comics as well. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. And yeah, absolutely. A lot of passion projects are being done using the Substack money, and all they're asking for is a newsletter in return. And it's like, yeah, I think that's, again, I see what everybody is doing, from Snyder to Stegman and Cates and Hickman and Jesus, the 25 people Hickman has working with them.
Kelly Thompson's got a good one.
Kelly Thompson, absolutely. God, I'm so glad I am so overdue to talk to Kel. She's great, and I really enjoy talking to Kel. So chalk that off. If not in December, everybody, we'll try for January. It's so funny, the month is, even though it's only the 6th. I try to schedule these things, and I'm really going to tell you, I'll let everybody know, Thursday through Sunday, I'll be busy with C2E2. So I'm probably not going to release that much during that period.
God damn it, John. What am I going to do when I walk my dog?
I know.
Listen to other people talk about comics?
Are
there other comic book podcasts?
I worked my ass off to have stuff to cover me during Thanksgiving, and I think I succeeded. God, and I'm so glad. It looks like, although I'm going to probably jinx myself saying this right now, I'm glad our connection has been fine. I talked to Seeley last Monday.
One of my favorite people in the world.
And I am well aware. And my internet kept cutting out, and Seeley had to take over a few times. So I just want to go back and cut out those awkward parts of the audio before I release the audio. But everyone can see it on YouTube. It's pretty funny.
The Seeley monologues.
It's sad but true. Ari wants to know if you bought any art lately.
So much art. I buy a lot of art. I got a page into. You want to see a page I got today? I got a Lois Lane. Well, I got a Superman strip, and I got a Sunday strip.
Oh wow! Look at that.
Cool. George Tuska.
I was going to say, I could tell it's George Tuska. Look at George Tuska's Superman. That is so fantastic, and I love the way he draws noses, whether it's Iron Man's faceplate on that little notch he puts on it, or all this stuff. Did Marty write that? Pasco?
I don't know who wrote it. I don't know. Maybe.
Doesn't say.
He gives no credits, no art credit, no write credit, no date.
I bet it. There's a real good chance it was Pasco that wrote that strip, because we talked about him collaborating with Tuska on that new strip, and yeah, pretty cool. And Kupperberg, I think, also wrote it for a while.
I'm working on it. Yeah, I like to buy art for things I'm working on as inspiration. So I'm working on something that's Lois Lane, Superman kind of ish that we're kind of developing. So that's kind of on the nobody knows about it yet, so don't tell them. Oh shit! I just said it on a podcast.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, Someone asked how did Lois not break her hand slapping? Absolutely, man.
Oh, that's I know. Superman has gone crazy and Lois slaps him in the face. How awesome is that?
It's gotta hurt.
She's done it before. She's probably used to it.
That's so classic, and I loved it about 70s Lois Lane, where finally they gave her the agency to be like, hey, no more hoaxes, no more Bruce Wayne dressing up like Clark Kent with me, man. I'm tired of your bullshit, Superman. I'm not your punching bag anymore. And it's true. It was so great. And of course now, God, I loved what Rucka and Perkins did with that miniseries they did, maxi series. And really, why there's not an ongoing Lois Lane book makes no sense to me at all. Because there is really, next to Wonder Woman, who is the most popular DC Universe female character, I ask.
I have the same question. I would write a Lois Lane book in a second. I think she's a fascinating character. I think you could do amazing things with her. And Superman is one of my favorite characters to write too. So that's also awesome. Well, I did a Lois Lane thing in
Batman.
Yeah, I've done love, but I just did this Wonder Woman story where we did a tribute to the 70s or the late 60s Wonder Woman. And I got to
the Emma Peel Kung Fu Wonder Woman.
The Emma Peel Kung Fu Wonder Woman. Yeah, me and Doc Shaner and I did a little 8-pager, and I got to write, that sort of 70s brassy Lois Lane, who's always making fun of Clark Kent and all that stuff. I love that.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. I shame on me. I haven't read all of the. I'm assuming it's in the 80th anniversary.
It is in the 80th anniversary, and it's Doc killed it on the art. And it's very fun. It takes place in the 60s, and everyone's calling Superman a cop because he's not wearing the cool stuff anymore. And I love if you go back and read those late Bronze Age Lois Lane comics, they're like the craziest comics in the world, and I adore them. But I like all those Superman family books. That are from we've talked about this before. I'm super into the late 70s Bronze Age DC comics.
I'm with you, man. Absolutely. Jimmy Olsen, Mr. Action.
Yes, Mr. Action. But they're just throwing everything at the wall. I just think it's so funny. Yeah.
And Mr. and Mrs. Superman.
Yeah, and they were missing all the time. Nothing was sticking. Meanwhile, Marvel would just do any old thing and have a huge hit.
That's true.
I like an underdog story.
Sarah Ferris. Hello, Mr. King.
Hello. What a pleasure to meet you, Sarah Ferris.
A massive fan of your work and find your work to be an excellent source of inspiration. I was wondering if you are currently able to speak on your upcoming indie projects.
Yeah, there's 2 of them. We had to push back the announcement. We were going to announce it early in November. I guess I can say it since it's Elsa Chartier and I are doing something because we announced that much on Twitter because we thought we were going to do the big announcement the next day for reasons that were beyond our control, for good reasons. That got pushed back, and we're going to do the big announcement in January after Christmas. So that the big of what it'll be and what it is. What can I say? I can't tell you much about it except that I've spent the last 3 weeks of my life pitching Hollywood producers about it. Going from studio to studio because they want to make a TV show of it. So it's been very much on my mind, and it's a cool big concept. And once you see it, you'll be like, of course that's what Tom did. That's all he talks about and all he writes, and it's the most Tom thing. But it's also something I don't think people have seen a lot of. And so that'll be announced soon. The first arc is almost done.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's because of all these delays. Like COVID, we just kept going. So we're super far ahead, which is nice. And I'm working on my second creator-owned as we type this. That's what I'm working on this week and next week and for the next month is my sort of second creator-owned, which I'm super excited about and is just at the very beginning stages. And we don't even have a publisher yet. We don't have a platform. We just have an artist and an idea, and we're going. And it's super scary. It's super fun. I don't like it at all. It's really hard to make creator owned. I've been doing these, like even Sheriff was with an editor at DC. It's hard when I always think of comics as it's 4 people make a comic. It's a writer, an artist, a colorist, and a letterer. But in fact, it takes so much more because it's marketing, it's proofreading, it's organization, it's editing, it's like all these things that DC has done graciously for me are now in my hands, and all I want to do is write and just sit at my computer and write all day. And it's like, no, you have to do the jobs of 30 other people. So that part is frustrating to me at times, but the creativity of it is unbeatable. I just love writing in different medium. There's a pressure to creator owned because when I'm working on Human Target, like an editor called me and said, you have to work on Human Target. So I'm like, okay, I'm working on Human Target. I just make Human Target the best I'm going to do. When I'm in creator owned, I was like, I decided to work on this. I did this shit to myself. Like there are 1,000 ideas in the world. Like I always listen to you, and I listen to all the, like I was, listening to Charles, and he's saying, yeah, I'm going to do a thing on beekeepers and people who steal bees. And I was like, oh, how did he think of that as the one idea he wanted to work with?
Oh, Sabella.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
hilarious. Yeah, you're right.
I was like, wow, that's amazing.
But so you don't see it as like kind of a freeing moment where you're like, no, I really want to do this. So you find that.
No, I don't. I feel it feels. I mean, if it's fun, it's very fun to write. But it's almost because you're so free that you feel constrained. Like artists never want to be too free. Like you don't want a blank canvas in front of you. You want someone to sort of say, okay, here are the lines you have to paint between. And so when you don't have those lines to paint between, it can be very, very frustrating and intimidating. And you're like, oh, all the mistakes I'm making are mine. It's also a little burdensome. And you can get, like, one of the things that stops people from writing, that certainly stopped me from writing for 10 years before I started, was I wanted to write perfectly. Like I just wanted to write. I would write a sentence and be like, why doesn't this sound like Ernest Hemingway? Why can't I describe a tree the way Ernest Hemingway describes a tree? Why can't this character, why doesn't this sound like Fitzgerald? Why can't I describe taking a drink like F. Scott? And I would write 3 sentences, and then I realized I can't do that and I suck, and then I would put it away. And it wasn't until until I read about comic book creators and how they sort of like, okay, you write this week, you write something else next week, you throw it away. That I sort of threw away that preciousness. And so that's always kind of, as a writer, it's kind of lurking. You see this as a sort of like preciousness of you caring too much about your art that you can't work on it. And so it's a trap to avoid in creator owned.
Hey, everyone is asking, or I shouldn't say everyone, but people were asking, they can't do super chats on YouTube. For me and some YouTubers, you can do it that way. So instead,
what's a super chat?
Super chat's like you just being online and like, hey, I want to ask a question, and I'll give you a couple of dollars to be able to ask my question and stuff. So instead, you can buy me a cup of coffee here. We'll be right back. So there you go.
I'm a $15 a month Patreon subscriber.
God bless you, son.
To John, and I suggest you all do the same. It is very much worth it. I definitely get a ton out of it. I'm also a subscriber to Stars, and I watched it once 3 years ago. So it's much more useful than half of my subscription services.
Thanks.
So yes, I highly encourage you to go on Patreon and do that.
Right. You're very kind, and or people, if you want to do even a one-time thing, that's why I threw up the coffee promo there, and people have tipped me there. And yeah, if you find this conversation useful, coffee.com. If you search for Word Balloon, I believe it was 9514, coffee.com/wordballoon9514. That's my account. And if you want to buy me a cup of coffee, there you go. Thank you very much. And especially during this holiday season. And I totally understand, Brian. I'm sorry to hear that. He was a Patreon of Word Balloon until he lost his job, went back to school. Listen, I don't want anyone spending money on me that they can't afford. That's why Word Balloon is free. I used to do the commercial. Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But if you want to help the cause out, that's why we got the League of Word Balloon listeners. Tom is a member. So many others are as well. It is greatly appreciated. And thank you, because certainly I lost my job at the start of COVID. And thankfully, that gives me more time to spend on Word Balloon. All I've been trying to do is expand the product. It was so funny, Tom. Last week, I was doing one of my Star Trek shaking my fist at the clouds at Discovery talks. And somebody's like, John, why don't you talk about something else? And I'm like, I talk about a lot of something else. I don't know if you've noticed, but I every month I put out at least 20, if not more, shows a week. and not just comics, not just Star Trek anger.
that should be on your business cards. John Suntress, not just Star Trek anger.
It's sad but true, man. It absolutely is true. So, and like I was telling you, I got the Oculus, and I'm like, Star Trek Bridge Crew. And it won't load. I'm like, drive me nuts, man. Come on, I want to sit at my station and fire phasers on either a Next Generation bridge or a original series bridge. Although I will say, our good friends Julie and Shauna Benson killing it on Star Trek Prodigy. And I got it. I don't know, Tom, have you watched Star Trek Prodigy?
I've only seen the first episode, which I watched with my kids, and they loved.
Oh, that's great to hear, because honestly, it only gets better. And right now they took a pause. They've only released the first 5 episodes, and then they switched to Discovery, which I get. I'm assuming that they're doing that to show the back 5 between when Discovery wraps up and Picard starts, and they can, still crank out new Star Trek in the interim. But they've shown the pilot was 2 episodes combined. So technically the 5th episode that's out there is the second part of this 2-parter that they did. It's amazing, and it's literally the best Star Trek story I've seen since enjoying the first JJ movie back in 2009. It's the best new Trek. It is the concept behind it, which I will not spoil, is very much a classic original series premise in the best way. I like these characters. I like the fact that they make sense. They don't know what Starfleet is. They're being taught by the Janeway hologram. It makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense than the lack of sense I find in Discovery and Picard. This is me saying that, but there you go.
I didn't like Picard. I apologize.
And I mean, I'm hoping for the best for the new season, but it's like, all right, I remember when you did this, I don't know, a million other times on Star Trek. And I'm a sucker for time travel. I'm a sucker for Yesterday's Enterprise. Wait a minute, time's wrong. First Contact, time is wrong. We got to fix it. I love those premises, but, kind of been to the well a few times. No new ideas? Well, I guess not. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I have not enjoyed Star Trek since it's been a while.
No, I hear you, man.
So I'll check out some projects. But to me, Star Trek has to be, there's something I was watching with my son who was watching the original series together, and just maybe digital destroyed Star Trek. It's a bunch of actors on a set looking out a window. Once you lose that, you kind of lost the whole thing to me.
Well, and I mean, again, they have, even in Discovery, I really think they are trying and are hearing the people that are frustrated. And okay, you want more of that? All right, we're going to try and do that more, especially this year, because it does seem like they are finally getting into an idea of, along with the big story, can you have a problem of the week? And can it be strong enough to hold our interest for an hour? Unfortunately, again, I just think that they spend too much time talking about each other's feelings. How do you feel about that? Oh, it's such a shame this happened. Well, how's it feeling for you? And that they have to reassure each other in that, I'm sorry, the way that I'm kind of against the way kids are being raised these days. You're so special. You're so special. Do you know how awesome you are? And they just spend so much time reassuring each other how great they are. And I'm like, Riker and Troy didn't do that. Jordy didn't have to go to Data and tell him how amazing he was every goddamn week, or how you feel about that. And the other thing is just kind of the stupid shit where it's like, hey, what is that thing? It's an anomaly. Well, what is it? We don't know. Yeah, because it's an anomaly. That's what an anomaly means, Admiral of Starfleet. Maybe you should know that. Good Lord.
For the record, that was not my rant. That was John's rant, but I started it. I should not have brought it up.
That was my rant. All right. And Langley says, yeah, we don't need to cry every episode. Absolutely.
Oh, well, if I was writing it, I would try to make you cry.
Lewis want to know, did I enjoy that Green Lantern Star Trek crossover comic? I absolutely did. Yes, I did. Very much so. Hell, my good buddy J.K. Woodward killing it. That's, by the way,
I love J.K. Woodward's stuff.
Everybody missing great Star Trek storytelling. Look no further than IDW, the Tiptons. Everybody they got writing and drawing Star Trek, it's their A game, and they've got good ideas. It is wonderful.
I really loved that they that year 5 comic that came out.
Yeah,
I thought they just captured the voices of the original crews so well. I was so blown away by that. I could not believe how well that was done.
I agree. And also, my buddy Dave Baker wrote this amazing miniseries for Voyager that's set in season 4 of Voyager, right after 7 of 9 joined the cast. And it's this great Voyager story in the middle. Like, it's funny, my good buddy Rob Burnett and I were talking late Saturday night, 2 a.m. my time. Hilarious conversation. And it's like the good Star Trek novelists and comics can write between the raindrops of established continuity,
Yeah,
and not interfere at all. But it's like, oh, here's something that happened in between these stories.
yeah.
And that's and unfortunately, as Discovery is like, oh no, we're continuity and we're filling in gaps. It's like, yeah, no, you're changing shit. And if you were a 5-year-old coloring, you're coloring outside the lines, and we don't appreciate it. But anyway, again, that's me.
No, when I was in high school, I used to read a Star Trek novel every week. That was my routine.
I hear you, man.
Start a new one on Monday and finish it by Sunday.
I donate.
I read. That's how I was so cool in high school. Let me tell you.
Well, I donated boxes of Star Trek novels to Goodwill in the last couple of years as I've like decluttered and stuff. I love those books. I absolutely, in fact, some of the ones I own, I've even rebought on digital so I could still have the stories. There's my favorite one of the old books, Doctor's Orders. And I think it was Diane Duane that wrote it, but
I love Diane Duane, man. She was out there. She was talk about, she invented her own continuity. She's like, fuck it, this is what Vulcans are like that you've never heard of before, and it's amazing.
Yep. And this story, McCoy is it's a great original series story, and McCoy is just, crab-assing it, Kirk, and about, you got it easy in command, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, really? Really? Great. Guess what, Commander McCoy? For the next, until I relieve you, you're in the center chair. Sit down, and you don't get to leave till I come back.
I feel like I read this.
And he disappears in this like dimensional alien moment, and McCoy is stuck in the chair, and even Spock cannot relieve him because it was a direct. Did you find it? It's a great cover. It's Spock and McCoy on the cover, and McCoy's in the command chair. It's so funny, and it's great because literally McCoy's like, well, can I at least get a bathroom break? And Spock thinks for a moment, he goes, well, technically, yes, but the captain would have said you should have taken care of that before you sat down.
I have here, these are my favorite books of all time. And this is the one that got me introduced to Star Trek, which was the J.M. Dillard Lost.
Oh, yeah.
That's my original copy from when I was
great story. I had that. I even had the hardcover of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I can remember reading it for the first time and just being absolutely blown. I think I read it before I even saw the series. I was like, man, I just love these characters. They're so fucking cool.
Dylan wants you to come to Edmonton as soon as it's safe.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, dude. I'm triple vaxxed. You all should get your booster shots out there. My kids, my last child has to get his shot because it was just hard scheduling it, so he gets it next week, I think. And then my family will be back. Now, I was all ready to kind of, go out into the world, not worry. And then I know we have this new variant, but the news seems to be tentatively good on it as of today. So hopefully I will be conning it up like a madman next year and going everywhere. Great. I hope so. I mean, it all depends, of course, on the new variant, but it seems good.
I hear you, man. I've gotten my booster, and I got my flu shot to even be safer, just for general concord coming this weekend. So I think I'm gonna be all right. Yeah. But yeah, I hear you, man. Absolutely.
If you have, I feel like everybody knows, but I feel like 50% of the people I know have had it, and the guys who are vaccinated, it's a bad cold, and then you live. And I'm not gonna put my life behind me for a bad cold. I'm
with you, man. It's so fun. I think back to literally at the very beginning of the pandemic, because we were at C2E2 together at the last convention before everything really went to hell, and things were already starting to go to hell, and we were all scared to death. And Tom and I came back, and he's in Washington, and I'm in Chicago, and we're reassuring each other for days afterwards. Okay, I really feel lousy. I think I have, but I don't think I have it. I'm not really sure.
Oh, man. Why do you think Human Target is about a guy who thinks he's gonna die? It was not. like I was trying to write something that was light and fluffy and was going to be for the New Year's, but it was definitely like in the back of my conscience. And the reason, like, he has a cough, you know, like that was like the number one symptom of, like, if you had a cough, you thought you were going to die. Like I definitely projected that onto Poor Chance.
Oh, that's
this
so
idea
great.
of what, because that's dude. I mean, it's not all that different now. Like, we're definitely not out of it, but when we were in the middle of it, it just felt like death was at our door. You just did not know when it was coming. And that's a weird way to live your life for a year and a half. It was tough. I mean, this was a very tough thing we've all been through. I feel like people have not acknowledged the strength that we had to get through it, and how appreciative we were, everyone. And one of the people who kept me going was John Werballoon. I got really into your podcast, and
God bless you, son. No, I appreciate it, buddy. Well, and again, that's why I quadrupled up as far as output, because I'm like, hey, everyone's bummed, and you turn on I mean, I'm a news junkie, and if you turn on the TV, it's nothing but depressing news, whether it's the supply chain or the Omicron variant now, or politics or whatever, and it's like, we need a break, man. And you know, again, thank God the streamers and stuff. Isn't it interesting, Tom, that Hawkeye, I guess, had the lowest debut rating? And I'm like, well, yeah, because everyone's watching the Beatles or the Wheel of Time. I mean, there were so many other things.
I was surprised by that too,
dropped,
because I thought when the preview came out, I was like, this is the hardest I've ever seen the internet hit by anything. Like, at least, that's not true. Like when someone dies or something, but like when that preview first came out, everyone was like, "This is the one I've been waiting for." And then when it actually came out, it seemed a little quieter than a lot of the other ones. It was interesting.
I just think, again, I knew why Disney was promoting the hell out of the Beatles, because it's a little more of a mainstream subject, so that didn't surprise me. It's fantastic. I still haven't watched last Wednesday's third episode.
I haven't watched one episode.
It's so good, and I'm so happy for Matt and David. It is such a love letter to their run. And is her name Haley Stanfield, the woman who plays Kate Bishop? She's great. And again, sorry I'm late to sorry I'm not watching her on Disney or whatever the fuck she did.
You didn't see True Grit? I'm doing a whole dedication to her.
That's
Supergirl.
Right. Of course honestly, Tom, I had no interest in, as much as I love Jeff Bridges, I'm like, don't remake True Grit. There's no
you're wrong. The first True Grit stinks, man. I'm a huge John Wayne fan. He's like trying to win his Academy Award. Come on,
Glenn Campbell and Kim Darby, they're amazing in that.
The remake is much better and truer to the novel. Go see the Coen Brothers one. Super good.
All right.
Turn it on. See a good Western. It's
eventually.
Great.
But she's amazing, and I love her. Everything she does. Again, I'm not going to spoil, but her physical reactions, she's funny, she is cute. She's the full package. She's great. I mean, no, not to be an asshole, but it's like, yeah, way to go, Kate Bishop, sure. And really, I didn't realize half of the. I mean, the big reveal in episode 2, I knew right away, but half of the Marvel characters that show up, I'm like, oh, of course that's so and so. I didn't even think of that. So it's great. It's amazing.
All right. I'll check it out. Put it on my list.
No. Absolutely. Oh, Langley agrees with you on True Grit.
Yeah. Damn right.
So there you go. And is awesome in Arcane.
She's super good. Her voice is directly from the book, so I stole the voice from the book.
That's cool. The original book. Rolando wants to know what's the main differences between writing for script as opposed to prose. I remember when I switched from script to prose, my dialogue was great. Everything else, not so much.
It's so much easier. Prose is a lot harder. Because in prose you have to describe things. That's I mean just to get in the nitty-gritty of it. I never have to tell you like what the snow feels like. Or that's not exactly true. Like if you read an Alan Moore comic, like that's what he does. He'll like be like, it smelled like this and it felt like this. And but to me, I'm always like, that's what the pictures are for. That's what I always say that the best part about writing for comics is you can throw it any knowledge you have of adverbs, because that's all the pictures do, is they're all the adverbs. You don't need to know those anymore. That said, now that I'm using more captions in Supergirl and in I hadn't used captions since Vision. I got rid of all captions after Vision. I wanted to write comics that sort of didn't have internal monologue and just have the pictures do everything. So it was an old JMS trick I stole from him. And but now that I'm kind of been down that lane, lived there for a long time, and ready to go down different kind of streets. So I'm back using captions again, and so I'm doing a lot more writing where I have to like worry about how sentences work and descriptions and all that stuff. And it's a lot harder, yeah. But that's the main thing. You don't have to describe things. That's the least fun thing for me to do when I write. When I was writing too, I hated that. I was just bad at it. I'm no good at looking at things and being like, that sunset is as beautiful as another sunset. I don't have the brain for it. Some people's minds work that way. Mine's no good at it. My brain's much better as Mitch draw a beautiful sunset. They can just look at it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, and we mentioned True Grit, as you've said that this Supergirl story has a lot of comparisons to True Grit, as you envision Kara in this role.
Yes, very much. Supergirl takes off. I mean, Supergirl's easy pitch to make. It's True Grit in space with Supergirl's Rooster Cosburn and a character made up Ruthie. So instead of, she's not the naive Supergirl, is the old veteran. That's why she's a little harder, a little tougher in this one. Yeah, but I mean, that's where it starts off. Obviously, it doesn't follow the exact patterns of True Grit.
No. I realize that.
Space for space, but I stole that beautiful voice. Where he's all these sort of complicated words. It's funny. I actually get to use my vocabulary and all that crap, which I don't usually get to use. And you like little alliteration tricks and all this fun stuff. Supergirl 6 is coming out soon. That's one of the best issues I've written in a while. It's the next Supergirl that comes out. There are certain issues of comics that I like better than other issues, like Vision 10, which is where with the prayer issue. Or Sheriff 5, which is them being stuck sort of in someplace. Mr. Miracle 6, which is them having the conversation as they do the invasion. Like there are like issues like in runs where it's like, oh, that's the issue where everything I wanted to be came together into one issue. And that's what Supergirl 6 is, at least to me. It's the second time I've ever read my own prose where I've cried. The first time was Batman Annual 2. And so, I mean, and not so much a trigger warning, but just like this one hit me in the gut. And if especially if you're a father of a daughter or you're a daughter of a father, it's an emotional it's emotional gut punch. And but it's it's as good as I can do. That's what I'll say.
Someone asked earlier the way that you write parent and child relationships. Would you ever write a rebel child to parent relationship?
Rebel, like R period, child. E period, B period, or rebellious child?
Rebellious child.
I thought you meant like the Rebel 96 from.
Actually, specifically, I mean Australian actress Rebel Wilson.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, I would write it up. Yeah, of course. Would I write a rebellious child? I feel like I've written some rebellious child. The two Vision kids aren't. Definitely not doing exactly what their mother wants them to do, especially the daughter.
Good point. Absolutely.
And yeah, my creator own has a very rebellious child in it, more rebellious than I thought when I sort of started out. And I mean, I don't think you can be a child without rebelling. That's sort of the maturation of being a human being, is learning what laws your parents have put up for you and what happens when you break them. I think that's what sort of prepares you to go out in society and figure out what laws society has for you and what happens when you break them. I don't think you can write kids without writing rebellion. So that's part of being a child.
I like it. I'm about to put up the variant cover for Supergirl 6.
Oh, I don't even know if I've seen the variant cover.
Steve Rude.
Oh yeah, I have seen the variant cover.
Wow. Hang on one second, everybody.
I want to buy this cover for
I really incredibly flattering back in the day when Steve Rude is like, hey, I'd love to be on Word Balloon. I'm like, yes, please. You're amazing. Of course I'd love to talk to you. He's such a sweet guy. And I really, my heart goes out to him because I know he's literally battling demons inside of himself and everything, but still just pours out his work. His wife is a sweetheart of a person as well. And I really enjoy them. And look at this. Boom.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a perfect cover.
Yeah,
That's just
yeah.
perfection. What are you gonna say about that?
He's the man. He's so the man. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the one I chose to show as far as
He's
the
not the
next
man.
issue.
He's the dude.
He is the dude. I haven't watched that documentary yet about him, but
Me
he's
either.
so good.
Yeah. So Supergirl. If you're like, man, I'm not into Supergirl. You don't even have to know a lot about it. It's a standalone issue. You can just read Supergirl 6 on its own, and then go back and read the rest because it's beautiful. And Bilquis is doing the art of her life and the art of life in comic. One of the best looking books with Matias Lopez on setting a new bar on colors. Yeah, I mean between Human Target and Supergirl, the two books I have out, that there's not a line that's drawn the wrong way. These are just the best looking books on the stands. No offense to everyone else, but they're maybe that Phil Jimenez is doing pretty good, but besides him.
Oh my God! And I talked to him and Cal. In fact, we have to schedule our.
I listened to that talk.
Oh my God! They were so generous with their thoughts and time, and really, Historia is such a great book. What a great debut! Again, I compare it to, it's like the Amazon's World of Krypton story that you've always wanted, and they deserved. I mean, it's just really. I mean, no disrespect to Billups and everybody else that's working on your stuff, but yeah, good shit. Yes, Brian asked if there is a documentary about Steve Rude. There is. It was on Amazon Prime. I think it's still there.
Oh really? Oh,
I think so.
I'll watch it.
Oh, it's great. It's great. And yeah, I mean, the guy's a genius. The guy's just a genius. So,
have you read all the Marvels yet? I haven't read it. I was wondering if you've read it. Do you know that new book? All the
new Alex Ross Marvels thing?
No. It's by the critic for the New York Times,
Douglas Woke.
By Douglas Woke. Yeah.
No, I keep meaning to schedule an interview with him, and when I do, I mean, that's kind of how I operate these days because I do so many shows. It's like, all right, I'm talking to Tom. I better catch up on everything. Oh, I'm talking to Douglas Woke. I better read his book. I better watch this documentary because I'm talking to this person and everything. And I don't mind it. It's great. But it really does dictate where my reading is and everything. But yeah, it's called All the Marvels, and it's Doug Woke. And Doug Woke is such a great essayist and comic book critic in the general sense. Not literally this book is great or this book isn't, but just commenting on the comics world. I think Doug is one of the preeminent guys. Very, very smart guy. Do you have that book too?
I have it. I haven't read it. It's on my list right now. Right now, I'm reading some biography of Walt Disney.
Oh, that's awesome! I'm reading a biography about Mort Saul as he passed and everything. So,
Mort Saul, that's a cool thing.
Yeah. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, I am fascinated by that period of nightclubs, and especially because Chicago was just as much of a hub as New York and LA back in the day.
Sure. And Miami, that was the other hub.
And you're right about absolutely Miami, 100%. And there's a movie, again, it's on Amazon. It's not on Prime for free. You'd have to rent it, but it's only like $4 or $5. It's called Live at Mr. Kelly's. Mr. Kelly's and its companion nightclub, the London House, hosted the top people in jazz and stand-up comedy in that paradigm shift period in comedy where we went from Henny Youngman and Jack Carter to Lenny Bruce and Mort Saul and George Carlin and those guys. And it's great. And this was the place to be for both jazz and comedy. And the documentary even opens with Barbra Streisand because one of her first non-New York big gigs was coming to Chicago and playing at Mr. Kelly's. And she did this amazing album there. And the cover of the album has her looking out at a body of water, and you assume it's the Atlantic Ocean or whatever. But no, it's Lake Michigan here in Chicago, and she was at the Oak Street Beach, one of our famous beaches here in Chicago.
Everything Chicago, I get it.
I assume it was Aaron Sorkin who wrote this line, but I know there's an awesome moment at the beginning of one of the West Wing episodes, and Leo, the chief of staff, is from Chicago, and somebody makes the observation. I assume it's Martin Sheen, and it's like, what is it with you people in Chicago? You can't wait to tell people how proud you are to have, to be from Chicago, and from your wife's family. I'm like, yes, we are, man. We're all very proud of our city's heritage. So, and it was especially the 20th century was a great 100 years for Chicago. It really, and yes, we had corruption and we had a lot of political machinations going on, but we had a good time as well. We had a really good time.
No, I'm married Chicago. My wife's from the northern suburbs, and my father-in-law grew up on the south side. There's a ton of Bulls and Bears and White Sox fans.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. We were a big city, but we're more blue collar than the two coasts were. We really were a working class city and stuff. A little bit.
As a guy from LA, I apologize that we weren't blue collar enough for you. I'm sorry.
Hey man, your own mother. Good Lord. She wasn't Rosie the Riveter. She was in Blu-ray land and stuff, God bless her, and DVD land.
That's true. Yeah, I lived a very LA life. My mother was a studio executive.
There you go. No, that's awesome, man. You know that.
I too.
Please, hey, you made up. Your street was fucking Baghdad, man. What are you talking about? You're more Full Metal than I am. Good Lord. I just
my kids got really into Friends during the pandemic, and I remember going with. Oh yeah, they love it. My house is all Friends all the time.
Go on.
My daughter for Christmas, her big gift is I got her a Friends poster with them all signed for all the cast.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I know. Sorry. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, really. But that's fantastic, man.
And especially my daughter and I really bond. We built the Friends Lego set together, so I'm all about it. But I remember going with my mother to the commissary to meet her and seeing all the friends sitting at the table next to us and just being utterly blown away and being like, oh, wow, look, this is so good. I tell my daughter that. She's like, I can't believe it ever happened.
I still haven't watched the reunion on HBO Max. I still have to do that.
Oh, it's well done. It's not bad.
That's good. No, I respect.
I respect Matthew. That. The only one that's Matthew Perry is a little. He said he was on he just had dental work and was on, but he seems a little slurry, a little.
Wow.
Even though he's making fun jokes, the jokes are landing. He's the only one that you're a little worried about. That you're like, oh, did he make it through this? Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of been the case for the last 20 years with Matthew Perry. So
yeah, that was. But it was well done. Those things can be very embarrassing. You kind of want to look through but it was not that. It was done kind of well.
Did you like the West Wing reenactment of one of their episodes that they did?
I didn't watch that one.
I loved it, man. I loved it, and it was really cool. Shame on me for not remembering the actor of color that they were used to replace John Spence as Leo, but it absolutely worked in a very interesting way because the guy's younger now and stuff, and it was so good, and it was just so amazing. It was like watching a play, with your favorite cast. It was amazing. So
I can't watch The West Wing. It's too ideal. I loved it so much, in my heart. One of the reasons I went to DC in the first place was because The West Wing came out when I was in college. I was wanted to come out here, but just the last 20 years of disillusion of what DC actually is, I can't watch it. It just makes me upset.
I understand, man. No, I hear you. Absolutely. I don't blame you. But yeah, I missed it on the original run because it was running opposite Voyager. And
I remember that. I remember it was, yeah.
Come on, what are you, nuts? I can't miss Star Trek. It's Star Trek. Are you kidding? Even shitty Star Trek.
That was probably the end of my Star Trek fandom when I switched off Voyager for West Wing. I remember that being a decision I made consciously.
Isn't it?
We're so old, kids. We had to watch things when they were on the television.
It's true. Isn't it interesting now? Voyager's kind of getting that same bump that Deep Space Nine got 5 years ago in terms of everyone kind of rediscovering Voyager. And as I've said, and again, this is me saying it, fits very well in today's politics and inclusion and diversity and a strong women's show. Managed to do it without hurting the men in the cast, and that we could have men and women that were strong.
I'm not the one talking. That all may be true, but Voyager is no Deep Space Nine. It's just.
Oh, I agree. I always say a third of Voyager is okay. A third of it really sucks. But a third of it is strong, good Star Trek and good ideas. There is about a third, I would say. Well, and I told you my solution to the 7th season.
No, you have a solution to the 7th? They get off the island?
How I think they should have gotten out of the Delta Quadrant instead of the way we got it, where it's the last episode, okay, we're home. It's no, do that mid-season and do the same thing that Deep Space Nine did for their last 10 or so episodes. But it's all all right, welcome back to Earth. That's great. And then you start going down the list of the crew, and it's like, okay, Maquis, you're under arrest. You're under arrest. You're under arrest. Take the Borg away for dissection and examination. Janeway, you're about to face a naval tribunal about all the ways that you violated the Prime Directive while you were in the Delta Quadrant. And that way you could still have a lot of the stories that you did, but also include, okay, everybody's home. What happened to Harry Kim and his girlfriend? What happened to Janeway and her boyfriend, Mark, that I hope was taking care of the dog for the 7 years she was gone? But all these people, I mean, it's like, okay, now you're home. Some of you are being, heroes, and some of you have personal issues you have to get through. Paris and his father, all that stuff was like good grist for the mill that I think they should have explored in that final half of the season. And no, all we got was, welcome home. We got the flash forward of them. If it took them 17 years with old Janeway and stuff and everybody old, I don't know. That was my solution.
That show was flawed from day one. Now that I'm an old man, it's just the pilot. Everything is in a pilot, and it was the premise that they're on. It was Gilligan's Island. Like everyone saw it immediately. Will they get off the Delta Quadrant? No, they have to be in the Delta Quadrant. So you have a premise that doesn't work. And number two, they had a fantastic concept. They're merging the pirate ship with the real ship, and they all got along after 3 seconds of working together.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Well, and also, again, surviving in the Delta Quadrant, the ship should have been grafted with a bunch of like alien tech that we've never seen before, or if you come back. And then everything that Ron Moore wanted to do to give them more tangible or visual problems, and Paramount said no, and Rick Berman said no. He put it into Galactica.
Well, I mean, you had, and the basic flaw of the thing was they didn't. The guy, we had Quark, who we were all used to as being like this amazing new character who was like living on both sides of the law. Yeah. And then for this, they added that guy, whatever his name is. He was so awful. He was like Wesley, but worse. It was just. Yes. And he was the center of so many of the early episodes, and you're like, you forgot to give him a personality. That's the thing about Star Trek. If you have a new alien race, they have to have a new personality that goes along with it. And they forgot. And yeah. So anyway, what am I ranting on Voyager? These opinions I haven't had for 30 years. This is wonderful being on Word Balloon.
It's my fault. It's all my fault. Can't help it. I can't stop talking about Star Trek.
This is why we're fans. Burnett, we like to complain.
Burnett on Saturday night, his premise for his late night show was anticipating the Spider-Man movie. And I'm like, all right, Burnett, enough. Let's talk Star Trek. And of course he's like, oh, absolutely. What do you got? I felt so bad. Matt Donahue, I have no idea what you're asking. Explain your question before I post it, please. Thank you. I'm sorry. Once again, annoyed by people on the text where it's like, you're a little vague, sir. Please explain what you're talking about. Thank you very much. And then I will throw up your questions. Anyway, moving back. Other things we've seen. I don't want to dwell on Star Trek more than I need to.
Want to talk about Dean Martin? That we can go even more older.
Oh, man, that was great. Oh, it was so good.
Are you listening to the podcast at the same time? The Longworth podcast?
Oh, of course. Yes, you must remember this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's weird that they're happening at this. So she's going into more detail than the show went. And I've also read, there's a famous literary biography of Dean Martin. It was before he died, though, written, but I've read that. So
Nick Tosches?
Nick Tosches. Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing. Oh, it's
one of the best biographies ever written.
Agreed. Absolutely. No, good friend of mine saw him in Vegas when he was just kind of winding things down when he was still performing. And he said it was just tragic because it was just Dean going through the motions. He'd see him at the the pool in Vegas, one of the casinos, and he goes, it's just sad as hell, and he'd just be drinking and staring off into space. Old man. Very, very sad. And again, I did appreciate in King of Cool the mystique of Martin and that nobody really was close to him. Nobody.
But I felt by the end of that, he seemed like he lived a better life than a lot of the crooners. Just in terms of his kids still liking him and him being... I mean, he cheated on his wife nonstop, his wives. So, don't think he was a good person.
Oh no.
But like when his kids needed him, when his first wife was alcoholic, he invited them into his house and he created
Yes.
a home for him. And he seemed to be a genuinely loving father, and all his kids seemed to like. And then, like, they had the thing where Sammy Davis Jr. didn't get invited to JFK's inauguration because he was black, and so Dean canceled, where Sinatra did not cancel. Like he seemed to be there was some decency to him that you could that I had not appreciated about the man.
The stuff about Montgomery Clift too, when they were
Yeah.
making Young Lions, and poor Montgomery Clift had just recovered from his auto accident and really had trouble walking around and stuff, and Martin would carry him from set to set, and that and also that they developed a good deep friendship, and Monty Clift was gay, and then that was not an easy thing for. I mean, all you got to do is read the John Wayne biography to hear about his feelings about Rock Hudson and Lawrence Harvey and stuff. Yeah, it still worked with them. I will give Wayne a little bit of credit and not be like a complete asshole as he could have been and as he was with other people. But yeah, no, Dean Martin, you're right. When chips were down, it seemed like you could definitely count on him. And that's interesting. But also that I just love, and I've noticed this watching clips of the variety show that he did, the times that Sinatra would guest star and they would do like a medley of songs or whatever. And there's one in particular that while they're singing together on stage, just to do a bit of business physically, as opposed to dancing, Martin starts just running in place. And Sinatra's like, what the hell is he doing? So he starts to try to run in place. But the whole time, Martin never breaks stride as far as singing goes, is right there, letter perfect on the songs. And Sinatra's like, all right, we're running, fine. But it's just that look of Sinatra's face, like, look at him get away with this BS. And if Frank tried to do it, it didn't work. And as everyone says in the movie, but we've all said this for years, everybody wanted to be Sinatra except Sinatra wanted to be Dean Martin.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about Dean Martin is he's the one guy who told Frank Sinatra to go fuck himself, which nobody did. Like nobody. Sinatra was literally the coolest person on earth.
Well, and just the leader. Everybody did what the leaders. Sammy could not wait to obligate himself in to stay in Frank's good graces, where Dean's just like, I don't feel like it. I don't care. I won't be there. No, I'll see you in the morning. Or whenever we decide to wake up, if it's 2 p.m, Pally, whatever. It's like, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. I thought by the end of that biography, like I know like his famous thing is that nobody knew him, nobody could get close to him. But I feel like at the end, I was like, he was the guy who went to the party, did a lap, and then went and watched a Western in the room. Like I can relate to that. That's where I want to be at a party. Like I do a lap and then go into my room and watch TV. Like I can understand this guy.
Oh, I'm with you. Yeah.
He wanted to be on top, but he didn't really care about that kind of stuff.
There is it's either Australian or British interview he did late in his career. And I thought he was reasonably honest about losing his son and everything else. And I do remember that tragedy. Good Lord. What a shock. And to lose a son, even, obviously that's the worst thing that can happen to a parent.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I understand that. No, that my grandmother, lived through that with my mother and, survived her another 20 years and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's the worst. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So I understand why it was shattered. I did find the Jerry Lewis's kids' observations interesting. That I found very interesting in the documentary.
Yeah, that he admired. He thought Dean was a better father than his own father.
Yep.
Jerry Lewis, very, very famously an asshole in every aspect of his life. Like there was.
Yeah, I know. It's so, man, I love hearing the comedians that still, knowing all the warts and everything, are still like, yeah, but man, I'll tell you, when I was a little kid, that guy just lit up my life. And, whether it's Penn Jillette or Richard Belzer or Gilbert Gottfried, all those guys, that generation of comics, man, they're all just like, yeah, come on, man, it's fucking Jerry Lewis. I don't care. He made me laugh when I was a little boy.
It's utterly fascinating. His humor has not aged. Like it's you and I are experts at looking back at old shit and being like, there's something great about this, even though it doesn't quite translate. It's hard to look at Jerry Lewis and be like, oh yeah, I see what's great about that. He's drinking that glass with his whole face, he's making the wine. Like it was of a moment where you had to kind of be in a society that was that like tight that he was loose.
Well,
Right?
Tom,
And
you
you're
can.
like,
I think you could appreciate seriously coming off of Iraq and dealing with what you saw, and that's why I do think the post-war generation embraced him so hard, because it was just this pure anarchy, and there wasn't time to be that kind of wild idiot during the war years.
yeah,
And that's I think that's a big reason why people love the Nightclub Act, and that the love continued for 15 years or so, well into the 60s. What I find interesting is, and if you have an observation on that, again, it's comparing what you saw. I don't know if you think that, am I onto something with that observation? Or
well, I feel like my whole career is almost dedicated to this, but I feel like after the war, uh, a lot of people fought and died and saw horrible things, and they wanted to create an ideal world for themselves, even if that world was impossible, even if they had to live in sort of this John Cheever world where they sort of lived on the surface in one way and cheated on their wives with both men and women in another direction.
yeah,
And so they created, this ideal 50s world that still causes us. I mean, it's still the source of a lot of our fight, is that some people think that world is perfect, and some people don't understand that there was just a creation. But it was like we fought for something. We're going to create something perfect out of it, or at least the appearance of it. And I do think in that sort of world, it's almost like almost like some medieval court where it's like the king has decided everyone acts like this, and one person gets to be the jester and jump around because it amuses the king. And I think Jerry Lewis was that jester. He was the guy who was allowed to break all those rules and therefore kind of do that. And that's why he became popular. But I think you might have had to be in that world and be as tight as those people were to understand why that's humorous.
sure.
They have excellent chemistry, and they could do 3 hours of improv together every night for 30 nights in a row. So that's a talent.
Well, also there was that two-man act. It preceded them and everything. I mean, Hope and Crosby and other, even pure nightclub acts. That there was Tommy Noonan and Peter Marshall, the Hollywood Squares host, was the singer, and Tommy Noonan was the wild comic. But it didn't get as anarchic or archaic. Archaic rather than, or anarchaic than Martin and Lewis, because you just didn't know what they were going to do next.
Yeah,
and they really were like, they came with the trappings of, all right, I'm the singer, I'm the comedian, but then they just would go crazy, and especially Jerry. But even again, Martin never gets enough credit for being the straight man, and even the times he got wild and stuff, and really no television show can capture what they had in their nightclub act, as I'm told, and as we read.
That's that we hope that's true. But like, yeah. I would go back and I would listen to Benny Youngman. Like you can still listen to his comedy and be like, all right, every fifth joke is funny, but he tells 500 jokes, so I'm getting 100 good jokes. That's not bad.
Yeah.
But I would not want to listen to a Jerry Lewis album.
I can appreciate that. That's hilarious.
I do think you kind of have to be there in the room. Actually, my mother used to go to Vegas shows when she was young. I was still alive. She'd tell me about it. She saw Sinatra and Elvis, and she growing up in LA, they'd go up there and do the circuit. I wish she was still around.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know that. I would always pump my father for those stories as well. And he would go to Vegas, and again, they'd come to Chicago and stuff. I'm glad I saw Sinatra open the United Center where the Bulls play in '94.
Wow.
With Don Rickles opening for him. Wow. And that was a great show.
That's when he was forgetting the lyrics, like that tour where he was.
But the previous time he had come to Chicago, it was at the Civic Opera House. That was the sad show where he was, doing that, and he introduced the band like 3 times and stuff, and everyone just like kind of politely applauded, and it's like, it's okay, Frank. But this was like watching an old timers game and watching a pitcher, and it's like, come on, Frank, you can still get it over the plate. Let's go. And really, like me and Mike Greenberg of ESPN, we were there, and literally. We're watching it like it's a ball game. It's like, all right, come on, Frank, last chorus. You can do it. Bring it home, Frank. Foggy day in London town. Let's see it. Come on, man. And he did it. Like, that was great. Oh, God, he still got it. Thank God. So yeah, we were just like it was good, wasn't it? Yes, it was good. And we were crying, laughing in appreciation for him. But yeah, man, no, and the band was, I mean, Junior was running the band. The band was tight as ever. Great Nelson Riddle and Don Costa and all the great composers and arrangers, their arrangements and stuff. And he just, if he had a teleprompter, which I saw very near the end, I didn't see it on stage, and we had good seats and everything. And he just was laying them out, man. It's like another tragic story is like poor Glenn Campbell, when he was really Alzheimer-y, but had the muscle memory to still be able to play the songs. He needed a teleprompter to help him with lyrics. But the son of a bitch, the poor guy, like, could not get through the day just doing normal things. But when it came to being on stage, it was still in his brain. It was still there, and he could do it. That's a great documentary to watch, by the way.
I remember my mother saying my mother was a Beatles fan and did not like Elvis, but she saw Elvis in the Back in Black period, and she sat in the first row. And she said, "That's the most beautiful man I've ever seen in my life." He said there was just it didn't come across on film as he was good looking, but when I saw him in person, it was like that was until she said she met George Clooney once, and she's like, "Oh nope, Elvis is number 2."
Interesting.
That was her assessment of the famous men she ever met. That George Clooney was the prettiest person if she ever met. Elvis was number 2.
That's cool. For people who are wondering what documentary about Dean Martin we're talking about, that's the title, Dean Martin, King of Cool. It was on Turner Classic Movies. It just came out this year. Pardon me, I'm burping. I'm having my favorite sparkling water, everybody. I'm enjoying a Spindrift. This is the mango orange flavor. And it's only 10
hoping
calories.
They send you a case. My goodness.
Dude, no, but thank God Target, at least locally, stocks it. And I'm so glad, because my grocery stores only had like 3 or 4 flavors. There's like 12 of them. And Target provides 9 flavors. So I've got, to start with, I've got orange mango. And if I finish that in time, I will switch to strawberry lemonade, which is a 7-calorie drink. And it's great because they have real fruit juice in them. They're not that sweet, but they still taste like the fruit that they represent. The pineapple is amazing. It tastes like raw pineapple. I can't recommend it enough. So I swear to God.
See, I go on other podcasts, but I don't get Seltzer Hour with John Suntress. That's what I'm missing.
Okay, so all right. Here's Matt Donahue now. You had a point you did not get to. I think it had something to do with 9/11. You said on past podcasts, you tell the kids, we thought we were going well in the 90s. He was hoping that you could elaborate on that.
Sure. Keep in mind, this is the perspective of a white guy who comes from that privileged background. But I do think it's hard to describe now. There was a sense in the 90s that you didn't have to pay attention to politics all the time. Now, there was politics going on. There was the impeachment. There was the O.J. Simpson thing. But it's almost incomprehensible, I think, to young people understand this. But like, we just didn't know what was going on in the White House every day, and we didn't give a fuck.
Right.
Especially before Monica Lewinsky, that stuff, and that was like a sex scandal. That wasn't even about like politics. And we just had this kind of sense that the world had aligned itself, that mistakes have been made, and in the 60s with the civil rights and in the 70s with the feminist movement, that we were sort of moving towards equality. We weren't there yet. We knew there were lots and lots of problems, but we were on that Martin Luther King long slope to justice.
Yes.
And it's hard to describe the peace that came with that. And I know as people look back on their childhoods and remember things differently, but this is my own memories of it.
They moved the doomsday clock back, not forward.
Yeah.
So they actually moved that was the world consensus, was things were getting better. They needed a lot of improvement, like you said, but there really was this like moment where it was like, wow, okay, now we can really concentrate on improving things because we don't have to worry about international, let alone national politics the way we used to.
It was my son is reading. he's doing a compare and contrast between the Giver, which is a story I didn't read, and like a Ray Bradbury book, like 451. And I was talking to him about it, and he was talking about the different sort of apocalypses they were describing. And he's like, what's the difference? He's like, oh, well, 451's about, the Cold War and like, these two sides fighting and this conflict. And the Giver is about like everyone having the same opinion and going in the same direction. And I was like, yeah, I was trying to see, I was like, that's what happened at the end of the Cold War. We all thought we were going in the same direction for a little while. And then we were just like even Russia wasn't that bad. We laughed at Russia. It was Yeltsin. He was drunk all the time.
Right.
And they were going to become a huge democracy just like the rest of us. And everyone was going to have Starbucks. And we were all going to be at coffee houses with Jennifer Aniston. And that was just kind of, again, I'm saying this from a place of male white privilege. It was, there were lots of problems.
There were still problems. Absolutely.
I was 12 during the LA riots. My junior high was on fire. So I don't ignore that sort of part of it. I remember taking the bus that day, and it was crazy. But after 9/11 was after that, we sort of suddenly government in the world and all the politics was in our face all the time, and the culmination of that was the Trump years when you just could not get every single day. You just checked your phone to see what. Like I felt like we were just live broadcasting our brains from the White House, and it was exhausting.
Yes.
So that was the point I was trying to make. That there's a fan there. Stephen Sondheim just passed away.
Yes.
One of my heroes.
Yeah.
And there's a great line from Into the Woods, which is a little couplet. Why can't we just live our lives with our children and our wives? And that was the sentiment. Like why are we always in the woods? Why are we always in these conflicts? Why can't we just live our lives with our children and our wives?
Yes.
And it feels very much like we're still in the woods. We're not sort of out of it like we were in the 90s for a little bit.
I hear you, man.
That was a long rant for a good question.
No. I think it was no. I'm glad you answered it, and Matt, thank you for explaining yourself, because I didn't know what you were saying, and it does kind of frustrate me when people are like, "Yeah, remember that thing you did? Yeah, can you talk more about that? What thing?" Well, it was that thing you did, and it's like a couple thousand conversations ago, man. Don't know what you're talking about. Help me out. But
that said, there are lots of shitty things that were happening in the 90s. I was probably wasn't aware of them.
No, but you're right. And truly, as another person that lived that period, and we're not talking about the Rodney King moment or even the OJ moment. It was after that where it's like, okay, wow, like things do seem to be getting better. And again, long way to go, but things seem to be improving. And then 9/11 was the big pulling the carpet out from under us. And it's like, we weren't paying attention to the entire world. We were asking the question, why do they hate us? And we were doing it from a very first class, not only white privilege, but American privilege point of view. And we were reminded that, yeah, it's a big world and everybody doesn't agree. And then I'm glad you mentioned Yeltsin. That's literally the reason why Putin started making his power moves, because he was embarrassed by Boris Yeltsin and he didn't like that the Russia and certainly the Soviet Union that he was such a big part of had lost its power. And so, I mean, God, watch, Frontline did an incredible 2-part Putin explanation with a lot of smarter people than yours truly. And let me tell you, it was eye-opening, and it's like, oh, now I understand. Now I see where we got to and everything. So yeah, what are you going to do? But anyway, lighter subjects. Last
God
night
I solve world history.
Well, no, I appreciate you explaining, what Matt was asking. Saw the first part of an amazing documentary on the Epix cable channel about the creation of A&M Records, Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss.
Wow.
And that whole period of the recording industry. Fascinating. It's amazing.
This is a different Herb Alpert than the Herb Alpert who's on basketball. This is the same Herb Alpert.
Oh, no, not Marv Albert.
Marv Albert?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, excuse me.
Sorry.
I'm about to play Tijuana Taxi with my band, with Whip from the album Whipped Cream and Other Delights.
Look, Marv Albert's like 107 years old. It's possible he's lived more than one life.
Let me whip out my trumpet and start serenading you as the Knicks go down in the fourth quarter against your Detroit Pistons.
I stand by it. That he's had a fake name this whole
And it's Alpert, not Albert.
Whatever.
It's It's Herb Alpert. Albert, Tijuana Brass, the Lonely Bull, all those great 60s brass instrumentals. Did the great theme song to Casino Royale.
Oh, yeah.
The David Niven James Bond movie and stuff.
Oh, it's a terrible movie.
But a great song.
But a good
Two
song.
great songs. That song and Look of Love with Dusty Springfield. Both of those coming from that movie. Yeah, it is a dumb movie. I love it, though, because it is such a stupid Bond movie. So, here we go. Jeff has a comment, I suppose. He says, longtime listener, first-time commentator. Welcome,
Hi.
Jeff.
Nice to meet you, Jeff.
Can't wait for the hardcover of Strange Adventures, best book of 2021.
Dude, I love you, Jeff, already. Yes, the hardcover is
Yes.
coming out. I should be saying that every 10 seconds.
I don't know if you can say who the name of your publisher for your independent work is. Image, maybe?
I cannot say, except we're doing something entirely different. It's going to be a new way of it's something new, and so hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah, we'll see if it works.
I understand. Lewis liked my Marv Albert.
Damn right.
I back in the 90s when I worked at my sports radio station, one of my best songs, Infraction, remembered it back in the day because Marv Albert from downtown. Yes, that when they'd score a point. So I did Yesterday. when the Marv Albert scandal of him being found with the cross-dressing prostitute, and they were singing show tunes in their underwear and stuff. I was busy doing play-by-play. Now I wonder what Matt Gukas will say. So yeah, No, I've that was my bread and butter, man. Doing impressions. I knew nothing about sports, but when I'd hear a great voice, I'm like, I can do that voice, no problem. And I got to meet Marv, and Marv was great. And then, man, the scandal happened, and that poor guy. It was like he was so humbled and quieted. I mean, he was never a jerk. He was funny as hell and just gregarious and so much fun to hang out with. And we saw him right after the scandal broke, and we're like, man, we're so sorry. And we weren't like, oh, this is great. We can talk about this shit and everything. And I'll admit, I made my song, the parody and stuff, but we still love Marv. And it's like, hey man, just so you know, we still love you. And if you want a safe space to just come and chat. And he's like, no, I gotta keep my head low after this scandal, fellas. I just can't do it. And never really got back the power that he had in the 80s. God, remember when he'd be on Letterman? And
he retired just this last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I still loved. I was a Knicks fan in college. I was always a Lakers fan, first love, but the Knicks were good in the late 90s. They made their crazy run, and so I listened to a lot of Colorado.
Well, as you can see, someone wanted to know how you're feeling about the Lakers this year.
I feel like that, and also I live in Washington, where we have half of the Lakers team that they traded away for Westbrook. And we're doing all right with them. I mean, it's hard. The NBA season is not a real season. They're a weird league where they have a second season that is basically the playoffs. And a lot of the big stars choose to not turn on their afterburners until they get to the playoffs.
Yep.
So you look at the Lakers and you just kind of hope that that's the case and that they'll turn it on. But to me, it feels like a lost season. It feels like they tried to buy their way into something because they know LeBron's on his. I mean, he has more mileage than anyone almost in the history of the league, and I don't think Westbrook was the right fit for this team. He's a guy who needs the ball in his hands. He's never been a good shooter. You need a guy who can shoot the three in the modern league, and he's not that guy. And I think I'm pessimistic, but hopeful. I don't know. We got LeBron gave us our championship at the exact right time. I wanted a championship in the middle of the bubble when I was at my most depressed. I got to watch the Lakers win one.
Sure.
And it was beautiful. And so to me, the whole experiment paid off, and we're just on house money at this point until we start over.
I understand. That's hilarious. I was going to ask, have you watched Cowboy Bebop on Netflix, the live action version? I
have not. I'm not familiar with the source material. I've read 70 reviews of it, so I could talk about it probably because I was fascinated by how people responded to it because it was all over the place.
I like it, but I do get the people that are like, this is just a watered down version of the anime, which is superior. I don't disagree with that. I find it fascinating in the same way that I found Sin City fascinating, trying to capture the spirit of the comic book in a film. and I feel like they're trying to do that in this live action version. But I still love it, and really, I'm so not an anime guy. There are very few exceptions. Recently, Dragon's Blood was a great show, and I was happy to talk to Amy Chu about that and how much I enjoyed that. But Cowboy Bebop, man, they had me from a low, and that opening title sequence with that incredible jazz score is so perfect, and it really encapsulates what the show is. And I applaud the effort to make it a live action show, and I think John Cho does a great job as Spike. I like the effects. I like it's an incredibly violent show, but it should be because that's what the anime was as well. I really really love it. So
No, I've been catching up on the streaming. I've been trying to watch some of the Zeitgeist things. I loved White Lotus. It wasn't perfect. I thought I had some problems with the very ending, but I thought it was very compelling. I thought that was really cool. Um, like everyone in the world, I thought Squid Game was a fucking genius thing.
sure.
I even liked the ending. That was one where I just my jaw was on the floor and how freaking great it was. The one I didn't like was Mayor of Easttown. I thought that was kind of overrated.
Oh wow! Hey, Thomas, you're doing that. Vamp for a minute, and I'll be right back.
You mean a vamp for a minute?
Yeah, keep talking about stuff you like, and I'll be right back. Hang on one second.
Things I like in the world?
I have to attend to something. I'll stand by.
What? I think we should all wonder what John is attending to. This is my theory. I think John went to his mirror in his bathroom to rant about Star Trek to himself because he wasn't getting enough Star Trek rant on the podcast. Like I think right now he's sitting there going through Voyager episodes and saying what is wrong with him because we didn't give him enough time. That's my personal theory. Are people still out there? I can't even see your comments because I'm not on that feed. Oh my god, I'm by myself. What do I do? You want a live reading from Star Trek? I don't know. I could show you art in my office. What have I got? I've got that's my Andy Kubert art. That's every page from. Oh, that's the whole thing. What? I hear John back.
Yeah, I'm back. I figured I'd zoom in to show Andy Kubert art.
Yeah, and I have some romance comic art up there.
Oh, very nice.
I have some EC art up there. I have some noir posters on the ground.
Thank you. Much like the missing couple minutes of Nixon's tapes. That's what that portion of the of this word balloon session will be. But
I love it.
Sorry about that. I had to take. I'll tell you about it after we're done, Tom.
Oh
but
my God. That's very secret. I assume you got your booster shot, so that's good.
I did get my booster shot. I also got my flu shot because, like I said, I want to avoid Concrud for C2E2.
You told me.
All angles. Here, Daniel wants to know. We know you love classic noirs. What are your favorite neo noirs after 1970? That's a good question.
That is a good question. I'm not as good on neo noirs as some people are. I mean, I love Chinatown. That seems like saying you like water to drink after you work out. Everyone loves Chinatown.
How about Michael Mann's Thief?
I like Thief. I like Cutter's Way is a very good movie I'm reminded of.
Good.
Cronenberg introduced me to that one.
Gene Hackman, Night Moves.
I like Night Moves. I just watched that. I love Blade Runner, obviously. It's like, I feel it's like, what are the great neo-noirs? I watch a lot of old noir. Like I said, I got into noirs and I decided to focus on the past. So if I'm watching one, I usually don't watch one from the 70s or 80s. I usually watch one from the 40s and 50s. I just watched the one that was on Noir Alley this week, which I can't even remember the name. Oh, The Unsuspected, which was terrible.
Was it? Okay, because I'm behind. So that's God. When I taped, it wasn't on Noir Alley, but they did a month in November about Sydney Greenstreet, and I haven't seen The Mask of Demetrius for years.
Oh, that's
a good sure one. That I DVR'd that, and we'll watch it. Watch
The Three Strangers. That's my favorite of those movies. With, with Peter Lorre and Greenstreet. Yeah,
sure.
That's so. I just watched that with my daughter over the weekend because they aired it for the Greenstreet thing. It's just I that would make a great. You could do that today as a thing.
You know what disappoints me, and I love Sydney Greenstreet, and what an incredibly productive senior portion of his life to be the strong actor he was. He was on radio on The Adventures of Nero Wolfe, and they gave him a great Archie Goodwin, his leg man, Gerald Moore. And I really feel like Sidney Greenstreet really like phoned it in for that series. And it really bums me. And it really
I
bums
can't
me.
see Sidney Greenstreet ever phoning it. He just have naturally that human being.
He's so it's just matter of fact. All right, let me turn the page. And maybe he just, took the check as opposed to really trying or whatever. Because I mean, as you know, one of the greatest, and it's so funny, his best medium was not television, although he did a lot of television, was old-time radio. William Conrad, I always call him the Spencer Tracy of radio because he was always so earnest and edgy in his performances on radio. And, the guy was a heavy-set man, and he couldn't get away from that. And, I mean, Cannon and Jake and the Fat Man and stuff. By the time of Jake and the Fat Man, he didn't give a shit, much like Sidney Greenstreet was totally phoning it in. Well, Bryan Cranston, early in his TV career, did a Jake and the Fat Man. And he said he was so excited about working with William Conrad because he grew up listening to him and watching him in films and stuff. And he goes, he just didn't give a shit. And like the two first scene that they had, he didn't even stay for Cranston's like lines and stuff like that, but he had to be there for Conrad's lines. But yeah, it was just didn't give a shit, picked up the check and left. And it's like, okay, I mean, it was near the end for him and everything, so maybe he was just tired. But yeah, I was bummed by Sidney in Nero Wolfe. It was not as good as I hoped it would be. And it's on YouTube, everybody. You can check it out. There are episodes. And you'd think it would be natural for him to be Nero Wolfe. But
for people, so Sidney Greenstreet, he's on Casablanca. He's the guy who owns the other bar. He's the big guy who owns the other bar. That's if you don't know Sidney Greenstreet.
Right, Ferrari.
Yeah,
the blue parrot.
The blue parrot who buys.
And also, he's Casper Gutman in the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah, he's the fat
gangster
man
that's trying in the Fat Man, right?
That's a little bit of a deeper cut than Casper.
Well, sir.
Yeah, that's very smart, sir. Oh, you're good, sir. You're a good man.
I like talking to a man who likes to talk.
Yeah, I like talking to.
We could be both described as probably Casper Gutman's favorite guys. By the way, for deep dives, everybody, and Maltese Falcon fans, excellent Sam Spade sequel to the Maltese Falcon, a radio play. It's an hour long. It was called The Candy Tooth, and it was on Suspense, the radio and television series, but this is the radio version, about 7 years after the Maltese Falcon. And it featured the cast of the Sam Spade weekly detective show, and Howard Duff is a very strong Sam Spade. But yeah, suddenly Casper Gutman is back and looking for another object. And it's a decent hour-long sequel to the Maltese Falcon.
Well, in this brings a very John Tom talk. So in the Unsuspected, that crappy noir watch,
yes,
which has a great performance by Audrey Totter. Just watch it for the Audrey.
I love her.
But she dies halfway through, and you're just like, why? We'll watch the rest of the movie.
All right.
But the star is Jane Caulfield, who is Bing Crosby's girlfriend. He was having the affair on his wife with for a few years.
Hey, how you doing? I hope you don't mind.
All
Dixie. I'm
comes
going to be
back
having
to
sex
crime.
with you.
Yeah, I know. That was, and it was during that time, so you can see sort of the height of the Crosby affair. It was 1947. That's when he was.
That's awesome. That's like
cheating.
That's like Bob Hope's big mistress that is in a lot of 40s and 50s movies. The other Marilyn M, and that's Marilyn Maxwell, and was so audacious with her affair with Hope that Dolores Hope was hosting either a holiday party or some sort of Hollywood party, and Marilyn Maxwell walks up to Hope's wife and is like, "Did you see the lovely ring that Bob bought for me?" And it's like, wow, what balls.
Are you listening to the Desi Lucy podcast, the TCM?
Oh, of course I am. Absolutely I am.
Desi was the cheater of all cheaters.
Hello, honey.
Oh my goodness. He would take at parties that Lucy and Desi would throw. They said he would take girls at the party. Lucy was hosting the party and take them upstairs to their bedroom and have an.
Yep. Well, what's the problem, honey? We fixed the bed. We made the shits back up.
Woo!
I know,
That
terrible. Terrible.
Yeah.
And it's so
talk about an idea. It goes back to our ideal built 50s world. We were saying like that's what was going on beneath that world, literally by the people constructing it.
100%. And also, again, another genius who was a lousy man, but a brilliant career man. And Desi Arnaz never gets the credit due for being one of the smartest businessmen in Hollywood and technical innovators of Hollywood. He created the 3-camera sitcom format that we all take it for granted. And it's like Yeah, Desi invented that. And Desi was smart enough to say, no, let's film our show and not
Yeah.
just do it live. And let's own our show. And, just lots of great business moves.
And
And
he was like in his mid to early 30s. He was so young. Like, I know it seemed old when we were kids, but like he was like, yeah, I'm gonna do everything. Yeah,
he
Desi
got it.
was a genius at business and a genius at music, and just maybe not the best husband.
They have audio from it on the podcast that Turner's doing about it's really about Lucy's whole career and really it's really Lucy. It's just a biography of Lucy.
Yeah.
And just like You Must Remember It, this being timely with their Dean and Sammy look while the Dean Martin documentary came out, this is all in anticipation of the Aaron Sorkin, what's her face, and Antonio Banderas.
But I was very disappointed because he has that statement now where he said, "I didn't watch I Love Lucy because I just don't think it's funny anymore."
Sorkin said that?
Yeah, Sorkin said that. And I watched it with my kids recently. Amazon Prime has the best of for seasons. And my kids were dying. They were laughing still at her getting drunk and her into candy. And they were just like on the floor cracking up. There's still, that show has some life in it still. We are old people, John, and we like things that older people like. We are problematic. We are
we're not problematic. Humans. No, we grew up in a smaller media world where we had fewer options, so we watched everything that our grandparents and parents watched, and that's okay. That's good. I think it gives us depth, and we still like new stuff. We talked, you mentioned Squid Game. I'll mention Hawkeye, Cowboy Bebop, even and stuff. Yeah, give me a break. It's fine. And I know you're just teasing us, but no, it's good. And again, I think, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been?
How do you know who to steal from? As I steal from.
And that's true too. Well, again, I mean, Tarantino is a classic example of that. He's a peer, and yeah, grew up in the same 5-channel world that we did, and it's like, no, we're there are bits to be mined and inspired and create new stories, and that's why it's always fun to talk to you about this stuff, and that's why you and I are friends. You know that.
Well, I was putting together a pitch today, which got accepted, so it'll probably be a new comic book eventually.
Awesome.
And for a new DC, for one of these mini series that I write all the time. And then what happened was what always happens, which is like, here's the character. What can you do with it? And my brain immediately just like, okay, what are my favorite old movies? What am I obsessed with? What are the things I'm watching that people haven't seen for a while that have content? I mean, that's what a Human Target is. It's me stealing from a lot of old noirs, especially Dick Powell noirs and Greg's, to me, it's it's an utter gold mine. You're going in there and you're like the 7 dwarves at the beginning of Snow White, where just like every time your pickaxe hits the wall, a ruby comes off of it,
I get it. Absolutely, man. Here's some more new neo-noirs that people are asking about. What do you think of the good long goodbye with Elliot? God damn it, Gould. As Philip Marlowe.
I mean, I think it's a pretty good performance, but it's not as good as a performance in Friends. I'm just saying, as Monica's dad,
of course, with Christina Pickles as her mother. Yes,
I'm trying to explain to my kids like that Monica's dad was once like the biggest sex symbol in the world. They just do not understand it. I was like, no, he married Barbara Streisand. He was what every man wanted to be for about 2 years.
That's very true.
Wait, what, are you kidding me?
MASH and Long Goodbye, and one of my favorites from the late 70s, another neo-noir, The Silent Partner, that Curtis Hanson directed. If you've never seen that, it's a great neo-noir. It's Christopher Plummer and Elliot Gould and Susanna York, who played Lara in the Superman movies.
Curtis Hanson, didn't he direct the worst movies of the early 90s? Like, didn't he married? I feel like
I don't remember,
like a pirate movie and everything. I don't know.
Oh, he might have done one of those Pirates of Penzance movies. But this is 1979. Very young John Candy in this movie. It's a Canadian movie.
Oh,
and it's a really cool low budget noir. Very good. The Silent Partner. Everybody, go check that out. How about Body Heat with William Hurt and Kathleen Turner?
It's almost a perfect movie. I watched it recently.
Yes.
It's utterly the from the first shot to the last shot. It's got a great twist, and much like Ice in Human Target, if you don't fall in love with Kathleen Turner, there's something.
Yeah,
she's just you see her and you're like, oh, I get it. I get why he's going insane.
Oh, that's
also
so
Kathleen Turner on Friends. So if this all goes
yes.
back, plays Chandler's
Chandler's father, Chandler's father, who's transitioned to a woman. Good stuff. Yeah, and poor Kathleen Turner. Now she got rheumatoid arthritis years ago, and it really totally wrecked her body. And thank God she's still acting. And very interestingly, did a lot of British radio acting while she was recovering, which I thought was terrific because she's never lost her voice. And they even, as bad as that movie was of V.I. Warshawski, she made better radio plays that adapted more of the Warshawski books. And those stories were, and she really kind of redeemed herself in that same way that the sixth Doctor Who, Colin Baker, really got screwed when he was the TV Doctor, the sixth Doctor. But those Big Finish audios, he's done so many great audio plays as the sixth Doctor. And it's like, no, it wasn't your fault, man. And just like I feel about new Star Trek, it's not the actor's fault. It's the scripts. If you give, and that was the case with Colin Baker back in the 80s when they were, kind of struggling with Doctor Who for a couple of years. So there you go. Oh, that's so funny. Uzab wants to know, will Greg Smallwood homage I Love Lucy like he did Bewitched? And obviously he's talking about this great kind of look. I get it.
I don't know.
I totally
maybe when Fire comes up. I don't know. Maybe.
There you go. And that would work because, Fire's kind of like the female Desi.
I mean, there's, we go through all of the Justice, well, not all of them, but, a lot of the Justice League International. We have Fire, we have Martian Manhunter, we have Nort, we have Beetle, we have Rocket Red. So there's a lot of opportunities for him to do these kind of things. Look, when someone is killing it as much as Greg is, you just let him do what he wants to do. That's my theory on the whole thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Buddy, we've been over 2 hours. I don't want to keep you up forever.
No, yeah, I probably should get going. And
all right.
But what a joy to talk about all this old stuff. What a fun time. I'm sorry that I should have been pitching my books all the time. I'm coming back. I'm launching this book, and I'm going to insist that I come back. So you're gonna hear from me again.
We'll talk next month. Absolutely.
In a month.
Yeah, that'll be great. No, and truly, that's why I was like, as I tell you, we could do that. We almost do it monthly. I have no problem with it. The audience clearly doesn't have a problem with it. They always have new questions. And no, it's great to catch up. And you're one of my guys. You know that. And,
and there's I have a new big book. I have a few big books launching. So yeah, you'll see me again. I have a new. I feel like Supergirl, Human Target, and there's another series or kind of 3 books that all go together. So the third one hasn't come out yet.
Okay,
but it's being drawn now, and the brilliant artist is on the 3rd issue, so that should come out pretty soon.
And that's very good. That's another DC book, obviously.
Another DC book, yeah.
Excellent.
I have 2 creator owns and like 7 more DC series coming. So
that's awesome.
You're going to hear a lot from me, and then maybe some TV Hollywood bullshit.
And Greg says, "Yeah, see, Word Balloon is your newsletter." I got no problem with that.
Can someone type this up for me?
I got no exactly. I hear you.
That's
man.
my problem. Like, I can't imagine writing. I would when you're a writer, words are sacred to you. It feels weird to sort of write them and then just send them out. Like, I feel like I would get weird. Yeah. Oh, that's very nice of you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
This this love is awesome.
Absolutely.
No, I should say, like, Human Target sold very well. Sometimes you write a book and it's just. I mean, don't worry about me. I'm doing fine. But
sure.
But I got the news today that the people really went out and bought that, and it's there's just a few copies left. So if you can get a hand on a copy, pick it up. It's hitting well. So I just cannot say how much I appreciate that because it makes the next one possible. So thank you.
Well, it doesn't surprise me, at least myself, because again, this is what brought me back to comics 20 years ago. Was the beginnings of this. Hey, we're giving you what you always liked, but with a different spin on it. That's what made Brubaker great. That's what made Bendis great, Fraction. And that's why I'm enjoying your stories currently and stuff. And it's, there's enough of the familiar there to entice people. But between you and Smallwood, especially on Human Target, it's incredible. And I'm yeah, I'm glad to hear that everyone else is enjoying it as much. And then, as we said earlier, what Phil Jimenez and Kelly Sue DeConnick are doing on this Wonder Woman Historia, it's the same level, and that's why Black Label has lived up to its expectation.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
DC is getting weird, and I'm loving it. We're getting weird.
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely, man. And yes, and thank God for weirdness. Indeed. Hey, everybody, thanks again for watching. I will wrap with my little commercial for coffee. If you want to support Word Balloon and you can't do Patreon, but you enjoy what I do here, here's a very simple way of doing it. You can buy me a cup at coffee, KOFI.com. And here's the commercial for that. But thank you, Tom King.
Thank you, John Saunders.
A pleasure as always. Thank you for being a loyal League of Word Balloon listener as well. But your greatest contribution is you coming back and us having these conversations. So thank you. Confrontations.
Confrontations. Damn right. We got to fight over something. All right. Well, I'll see you later, John.
Later, man. Thank you, guys.